speakers. We'll have you kind of make a little cluster. And those who are going to be actually speaking, maybe be more like a little front row, and everybody else kind of make a back row. Like a, yeah, scoot all the way in. All the way. Excuse me. All right. You want to be shoulder to shoulder, try to stay like as close in the white backdrop as you can.
All right. Welcome, everyone. I am City Council Member Robin Wansley, and I am also the minority leader for the Democratic Socialist City Council Caucus. We are here today because City Council is about to vote once again on whether or not to spend $6 million of taxpayers' funds to buy land or a parcel of land to build essentially what is a cop city, which would cost at least $40 million to complete this project. The City Council already voted down this proposal back in March, but Mayor Fry is bringing it back for round two. And the proposed cop city plan from MPD essentially reflects a wish list of things that's inclusive of special rooms for decompression. We've heard about spaces being used for massages and things of that nature. And in a time when we have a police department that went over budget, and their existing budget is already $200+ million, but just last December went over budget by $20 million and is already projected to go over budget by at least $23 million this year. It's important that we are not spending our precious resources inefficiently and on wish lists. There are a multitude of public safety initiatives that do not cost $6 to $40 million that can make our community safer. And we just heard about one of those initiatives yesterday with council helping fund at the cost of $2 million for the creation of a non-fatal task force, which is already delivering significant reductions in gun violence and doing so with just 1% of the police's $220 million budget. So we know when we use MPD's substantial budget in an efficient and data-backed way, we can make our community safer. And there is nothing about this project that truly moves us towards that ultimate outcome. And that said, it makes no sense why we will also use this as an opportunity to defund other critical public safety or public assets like our animal control facility or traffic calming to also fund what is essentially a non-useful project. It would represent us putting a wish list item on the city's credit card, and taxpayers, you all will have to pay that off at the end of the day. And that is at, again, a $40 million. That's a conservative figure of what you will have to cover should this item move forward. And I think there's been a number of us on council who have articulated opposition to this project on the basis of saying, let's continue investing in what are clear city priorities, the things that our residents care about. Let's make sure we're investing in affordable housing to truly address our housing crisis that is leaving hundreds of our neighbors unhoused and many on the brink of being without shelter themselves. Let's use that $6 to $40 million to invest in green energy infrastructure to help bring our residents' utility bills down. Let's make sure we're investing in neighborhood traffic calming to ensure that our streets are safer and easier to navigate, regardless if you are driving in a vehicle, riding with your bike, or taking a scooter, or simply just trying to get around the city in your mobility device. You should have no worries about your safety while using our streets. And let's use our resources to continue in that direction. So I will note we're going to be taking this vote up once again in a couple minutes at our committee of the whole. I know a number of my colleagues will have a robust debate around why we should not continue on with this project. We need to vote it down once and for all and get back to the business of actually having a conversation of how we're going to spend the city's resources, spend taxpayers' resources in a way that actually advances the collective good and collective well-being of our city. And this project is not a part of that conversation and direction. So with that, we're going to hear from a number of community members and leaders about why they are also urging the city council to vote down this project. First, I will introduce Dr. Nikema Levy-Armstrong, who is an attorney and local civil rights activist, who have been leading the charge around making sure that we prioritize and actually expand civil rights protections for our residents, and also advancing the movement for racial justice in Minneapolis and all across the country. So I will introduce her to come up.
Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. I'm Nikema Levy-Armstrong, civil rights attorney, activist, as well as the founder of the Racial Justice Network. And as you all know, I've been on the front lines for a very long time trying to raise awareness about the ongoing issues regarding the Minneapolis Police Department, not only focused on police brutality, violence, and the unjustified use of deadly force against residents, but also the neglect that Black, Brown, and Indigenous residents have had to endure at the hands of the Minneapolis Police Department. As you all probably remember, in 2024, a man by the name of Davis Maturi, an African-American man in South Minneapolis, called the police over 38 times, he and his family, raising alarm bells about their neighbor, a white man, David Sawchuk, who continued to threaten and harass and intimidate that family. One of Davis Maturi's last calls before he was actually shot by Sawchuk, John Sawchuk, was that he had pointed a gun at him. And he felt that the Minneapolis Police Department did not take the concerns seriously. And after Davis Maturi was actually shot and almost killed, the statements from the Minneapolis Police Department tended to place the blame on Davis Maturi. What does that say to the average African-American resident in the city of Minneapolis when they have to call 911? That their lives really don't matter at the hands of MPD. And in between that time, what do we have to deal with? MPD failing to take their responsibility seriously when a Black woman, Mariah Samuels, and a Native woman, Allison Lucier, called 911, raising concern about domestic violence. And both of those women wound up murdered at the hands of their abusers. At least that is what Allison Lucier's family believes happened to her. But after her body was found, we had statements from Chief O'Hara, basically focused on Allison Lucier's substance abuse issues, not treating the scene of her death as an actual crime scene, and not even reporting, requesting information from the medical examiner's office for 2 years. That's the level of service that our community has received, knowing what we have dealt with year after year after year leading up to the Minneapolis police killing of George Floyd, which, as we all know, caused a worldwide outcry for justice, something that could have been prevented if city leadership had listened to those of us on the front lines, to victims years ago. So now we have a chance to continue to hold the Minneapolis Police Department accountable for its actions. And instead of them even taking the advice that we gave when I was co-chair of the mayor's work group on community safety, where we said, look, the problem that the department that caused these problems is not equipped to solve these problems. Bring in a professional police training organization like IADLIS to help you overhaul your training and your response times and things like that. That has not happened. So we've had the same department continuing to absorb resources, who have overspent their budget by $20 million, now turning around and asking for an additional $40 million for a building that they don't deserve. There are so many problems that our community is continuing to face, especially in the aftermath of Operation Metro Surge, where every other day we have to hear about a business in our community having to close because of inadequate resources. We know that it's almost the summertime, that our young people will be out of school, that they will be looking for things to do. Why aren't we investing in our young folks so that they can be more productive in the community instead of walking the path towards the juvenile or adult criminal justice system. So we have higher priorities than focusing on a police department that refused to spend within its budget this year, as well as the year before, that is asking for money and resources that they do not deserve, that has failed the Black, brown, and indigenous residents of this city, and who still don't understand that their job is to protect and serve and not just focus on themselves. So I'm asking the City Council to use logic and reasoning in this situation, to put the residents ahead of the requests of the Minneapolis Police Department in demanding more money that our city does not have and that need to go towards more pressing priorities. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nakima Levy Armstrong. Next, we will have Jacob Haskins, who is a Ward 11 small business owner.
Thank you for having me. So regardless of whatever your stance is on police or this facility, there's one thing I think everybody can get behind, which is that we use our taxes in a very efficient and manner that works for us. Since March, I've spent about 40 hours of my own time really digging into what this facility is about, the land, everything, just all the facets of it. And as well as reading the consent decree, just for that background, because that's necessary to understand the scope of the project. So today, there's a cluster of lots that has a combined assessed value of $2.3 million. The mayor's office is asking City Council to purchase that land for $6 million. So that's about almost $4 million over the asking price. That does not sound like a good use of our tax dollars to me. According to the city's own published timeline, this facility was on a project roster since 2021. Yet this property wasn't identified as a perfect fit for this project until shortly after it was purchased in 2023 by a local land development team for $4 million. So now we are going to pay $6 million for something that is only worth $2.3 million. So as a business owner, I can't get behind purchasing a piece of land for 50% or essentially double what it's worth, let alone almost 3 times what it's actually worth. Then there's the facility itself, which I have some exceptions with on the price tag. As someone who's been doing commercial construction for over 12 years, the proposed $38 to $40 million price tag does not sit well with me. If we look at the North Commons Park Improvement contract that is currently underway, that contract is for $35 million. If we break all of that down to what the scope of work is, it's about $1,100 a square foot for what is being added. My apologies. For what is being added to that project. So a 3-story training facility with a footprint of roughly 60,000 square feet would be closer to $200 million. I'm just going to let that sink in for a second. $200 million, which is a far cry from 38 to 40. So if you don't like or agree with my numbers, that's fine. We can look at a case study in another state. So in Georgia, the city of Atlanta approved a $30 million budget for a very similar facility. At the end of that project, the price tag was $112 million. And that finished last year. That started several years prior to that. In spite of 11 hours of community testimony in opposition to the project, they moved forward with it and ended up overspending by $72 million. So currently, right now for this project, there's no support at the state level for funding or the purchase of the land, which means that you and I, all of us, get to pay for it out of our pockets, out of our tax money. Currently, right now, the land purchase is slated to come out of our parks, capital improvements, and street repair budgets for this calendar year. So, Since 2020, the MPD's budget went from 190 million to over 200 million currently. In that time, MPD has cost the taxpayer an additional 60 million paid to the state for the MDHS settlement, as well as all of these civil lawsuits for wrongful killings. So, in 2025, MPD also, as we've heard, went over budget by nearly $20 million and didn't notice until asked about it. I apologize. Mayor Fry has recently told us that it's time to get serious about looking at programs that don't work due to budget shortfalls, and I couldn't agree more. I think a department that has an ever-increasing budget consistently overspends and makes $60 million errors in judgment that result in the loss of life. They do not need a redundant facility. And I say redundant because we have already spent over $100 million improving existing precinct facilities to include the health and wellness and training that is required in the consent decree. As a small business owner, if I ran my company this way, people would laugh at me when I failed, and they would be right to do so. So why would we reward this with more of our hard-earned tax dollars when the real pillars of crime prevention, which are access to affordable health care, housing, and a solid education system, need so much help right now? These investments in our community will make our city rich in ways that money alone cannot measure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Next, I will introduce Sarah Bassett Kim, who is a Wyndham resident and Wyndham Elementary School parent.
Good afternoon. My name's Sarah Bassett Kim. I'm a resident of the Wyndham neighborhood in Minneapolis. My family has lived in Wyndham for 6 years and our child attends Wyndham Elementary. I'm here today with a few of my neighbors, and we are asking the City Council to vote no on the proposed land purchase for the Community Safety Training and Wellness Center. This proposed land purchase raises serious concerns because of the location, the process, and the lack of community trust surrounding it. The property is in a residential neighborhood with homes, apartments, churches, child care centers located on the neighboring streets, and Wyndham Elementary School just 400 feet away. And yet many of the people most impacted by this proposal did not even know it existed. Yesterday, I spoke with the Wyndham Elementary School leadership, and the school had no knowledge of the proposal. That lack of communication is unacceptable for a project of this size. Enrollment at Wyndham Elementary is currently growing, which is wonderful news for both the neighborhood and Minneapolis public schools. However, many families are concerned that a multi-year construction project directly near the school, followed by unknown long-term concerns about noise, traffic, environmental impacts, could discourage families from enrolling or remaining at the school. Our community is also still carrying recent trauma from the Annunciation school shooting and the impacts of Operation Metro Surge. Good public planning should take into account not only physical impacts, but also the emotional and psychological realities that communities are living with. Ignoring that context risks deepening mistrust and making residents feel unheard in decisions that directly affect their daily lives. So all of this makes meaningful community engagement even more important. Because outreach has been so limited, I believe city leaders are likely misunderstanding the sentiment, the true sentiment of the neighborhood. Many residents are only now learning about this proposal because neighbors, and not the city, have been doing the work of informing the community. And when people do learn about it, the reaction we consistently hear is surprise and concern. A project of this size and impact should not move forward without community members. Instead, we're being told there's urgency to buy this land now and ask questions later. But once the city spends $6 million purchasing the land, there will be an enormous pressure to continue the project regardless of future findings, cost overruns, or community opposition. There are too many unanswered questions. We do not have transparent cost projections. We do not know why other options were never seriously explored, including exploring several alternative sites. We do not know what measurable outcomes this project is supposed to achieve or how success will be evaluated. And I want to be clear, that my opposition to this project is not an opposition to public safety. The Minneapolis Police Department absolutely deserves effective and modernized training, accountability, and reform, but this proposed building itself is not reform. One of the biggest challenges facing the Minneapolis Police Department right now is trust between the department and the community. Rushing through a major project without meaningful public engagement risks damaging that trust even further. So the city has an opportunity right now to pause, listen, and if they want to, do this correctly. So council members, I'm asking you to vote no on this land purchase. Instead, commit to a transparent process that genuinely includes the community before major decisions are made. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. At last, we will have Councilmember Soren Stevenson.
My name is Soren Stevenson. I'm the City Council member for Ward 8, which is South Central Minneapolis. I am also a survivor of Minneapolis police violence. In 2020, a Minneapolis police officer shot me with a rubber bullet, and I lost my left eye and most of my sense of smell. Despite repeated pushback from the City Council and from community, the Mayor's administration has brought forward this $38 to $40 million public safety training and wellness center again. We have already voted for a 3-year contract for a gun range for MPD to use for training. We have already funded nearly $100 million in MPD upgrades to precincts and other facilities. And last year, MPD overspent nearly $20 million, while this year they're on track to overspend $23 million. At the same time, our communities are in need. Our communities are in deep need of housing, green infrastructure, climate and resiliency upgrades, filling potholes, and so much more. We're in a time when we need to be investing in our communities and our real community needs, and this project does not do that. I did not support this project when it came around the first time because it is simply not a priority at this time. We have other priorities which I've already named. And so I will not be supporting this project again because even yet again, just mere months later, it is still not a priority when we still have to be investing in housing, in education, in filling potholes, and in safety across the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Stevenson. We'll take a few questions before we have to go ahead into committee. Yes.
Hi, Melody with Southwest Voices. So I've read the consent decree, and it's really obvious that the precincts are not in great condition, and it's very obvious that there is a need for updates, and there's been requests by an outside audit for a training center. And so we have to get through this consent decree. How is the city council, I guess, or the city gonna manage having to address those concerns from outside organizations saying that they need these upgrades, and everything that you just shared, being over budget, already making upgrades, like how are we gonna be able to balance these two things?
Yeah. So just for clarification, the Minnesota Department of Human Rights, or our settlement agreement, only requires that the city has to carry out and execute a facility assessment, which we did. And it named that we needed to make those adjustments to our existing facility serving our police officers and the agency overall. We executed that, and we, as was repeated up here multiple times, have made nearly $100 million in renovations to every single precinct. We still have, as of now, the first precinct has been renovated and upgraded. The now South Minneapolis Community Safety Center, which will include the third precinct, will have renovations to it that includes training, wellness needs, those things that have been articulated as recommendations in that report. And then what's down the pike is the North Minneapolis Safety Center that will include the 4th precinct and then the 5th precinct as well. So we've made tens of millions of dollars in investments to meeting that particular need. So the consent decree has been covered in many ways. What we are asking and what we have been saying is bring to our independent evaluators a different proposal that really elevates what we're already doing. Councilmember Stevenson highlighted that we're already entering in contracts with vendors to do our gun range training at $100,000 per year, which shows we don't need a $40 million investment in a facility to truly meet that need. So let's bring that as a proposal back to the table. But I think it's important that across, all of our spaces, that it becomes named that the consent decree does not require this. Yes.
There's been the process of consent decrees as a vehicle for police reform. They're criticized because it's like you're spending things on tangible purchases, but they don't always result in, they're not directly linked to outcomes that you care about in terms of police brutality, et cetera. I'm wondering if you can, you're saying that some of this is but on the other hand, we're locked into that. We're locked into it. We're gonna have to spend money on things that might feel uncomfortable to spend on, but it's what the consent decree says we need to do. I'm wondering if you can speak to the tension about you're spending money, consent decrees are about spending money on a laundry list of things, in part. But then there's also this idea that it's that yes, it's money that we could be spending on these different priorities.
I want to tease that out once again. The consent decree does not have any requirement in its 200-page document that says we have to spend money on purchasing a new facility. What the consent decree offers is over 100 provisions of how we get back into compliance with human rights law. And that does address the myriad of issues that residents have been experiencing, specifically Black and Brown Indigenous residents, when it comes to experiencing brutality. And a lot of that is around how to do training, which MPD is already doing in-house. They brought in other outside consultants, as also required by the consent decree, to help them upgrade their use of force training so that they're not going out and brutalizing people through excessive force, kind of like what our council member Stevenson experienced himself. That is very different than what has been communicated to the public and to the council, is that the consent decree required the purchase of this facility. These are two separate things. And one of them is true. There is 200 provisions that we have to complete. That does not come with us needing to purchase this facility. So I just wanted to name that.
Last question.
Is there any price tag that would work for you? Would you be against the facility if it only cost $20 million, $10 million?
No, this is not a need when it comes to actually giving residents true public safety. I highlighted the example yesterday. We're creating a non-fatal task force that within a month of its execution, they've helped already almost triple our clearance rate. So we're talking about solving cases, delivering justice for residents. $2 million of that $220 million police department is helping reduce gun violence for our communities and helping keep them safe. So we know when we actually have a targeted focus and invest in what we know to be right, we don't have to spend on frivolous things, and this is a frivolous purchase.
Thank everybody.
Thank you. Yes, thank you all. Yes. Thank you. Yes. Did you all park in the off ramp by any chance?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, that's rare. Okay, because then we could give you parking passes. Oh, wait, so you didn't park?
were able to park.
Okay, well, so sorry about that. Did not know that piece. Yes. Thank you all for coming.
Good afternoon and welcome to the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole for May 19th, 2026. My name is Aisha Chugtai and I'm the Vice Chair of this committee. Chair Chowdhury is out of state on business matters. I'm going to call to order this meeting and ask the clerk to call the roll to verify the presence of a quorum.
Councilmember Payne is absent. Wansley.
Present.
Greenville.
Present.
Vita.
Present.
Warren.
Present.
Osmond.
Present.
Schaefer.
Present.
Stevenson.
Present.
Chavez.
Present.
Whiting.
Present.
Palmisano.
Present.
Vice Chair Chugtai.
Present.
And Chair Chowdhury is absent. There are 11 members present.
Thank you, Clerk, and let the record reflect that we have a quorum. Before we begin the meeting today, I want to offer a friendly reminder to all members, staff, and the public that these meetings are broadcast live to enable greater public participation. These broadcasts include real-time captioning as a further method to increase the accessibility of our proceedings to the community. Therefore, all speakers need to be mindful of the rate of their speech so that our captioners can fully capture and transcribe all comments for the broadcast. We ask all speakers to please moderate the speed and clarity of your comments. Colleagues, our agenda for this meeting is before us, and I will briefly explain its order. First, we will begin with the reports of our standing committees, then move to our consent agenda, then our discussion agenda, and lastly, our receive and file item. Are there any questions about that order or amendments that council members would like to make to today's agenda? Please make sure to use speaker management. While I wait to see if there are any amendments, I have one amendment to this agenda to walk on a that's a walk-on related to a request by staff for a grant application in the Neighborhood Safety Department. You should have copies of the request for council action. That's RCA number 2026-00595, and staff are also available to answer any questions. I'm going to move to add this to part of our consent agenda.
Second.
Thank you. I'm not seeing any other amendments, so may I have a motion to adopt the agenda as I've amended?
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The ayes have it, and that motion carries. Now we will begin with our standing committee reports and start with the Enterprise and Labor Relations Committee, chaired by Council Member Palmisano.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The ELR Committee has 12 items to bring forward this Thursday. Item number 1 is an ethics education ordinance. Item number 2 are collective bargaining agreements with the Minneapolis Professional Employees Association. Item number 3 is a bid for public service building elevator repairs and maintenance. Item number 4 is a bid for traffic maintenance, facilities, roofing project. Item number 5 is a contract with Berry, Dunn, McNeil, and Parker for ERP program management services. Item number 6 is a contract with HCM Architects for architectural and engineering design services. That's for our water distribution facility. Item number 7 is a legal settlement, the compensation claim of Troy Bjornstad. Item number 8 is the workers' compensation claim of Christina Schmidt. Item number 9 is the workers' compensation claim of Stefan Swanson. Item number 10 is the workers' compensation claim of Michael Tracy. Item 11 is a legal settlement of Corto Glafor Kapanaku versus the City of Minneapolis. And item number 12 is a gift acceptance from the Public Rights Project and Safer Communities Initiative for members of our City Attorney's Office to attend a conference that happens to be here in Minneapolis. I'll be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any questions related to the Enterprise and Labor Relations Committee agenda? Seeing none, we'll now move to our Business, Housing, and Zoning Committee, which will be presented by Chair Osmond.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The BIS Committee will be bringing 13 items on Thursday council meeting. Item 1 approves a liquor license for Cafe Harmony. Item 2 approves an expansion premises of Indeed Brewing Company. Item 3, approves an interim use permit for 222 Plaisdale Avenue. Item 4, approves 2026 HUD action plan. Item 5, approves 5 liquor license. Item 6, approves 10 liquor license renewals. Item 7, approves gambling license. Gambling license. 1 gambling license. Item 8, approves a street renaming changing to Cesar Chavez Avenue to 4th Avenue North. Item 9, authorizes a contract for public art. Item 10, approves the budget and operation for the McPhail Center for Music. Item 11, authorizes a contract for tenant resources. Item 12 is a gift acceptance from Mississippi Watershed Organization. And lastly, item 13 approves rezoning for 1914 Washington Avenue. With that, I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions related to the Business Housing and Zoning Committee report? I will recognize Councilmember Warren.
Thank you, Chair. I am just recusing myself from item number 9 on the Business Housing and Zoning Committee report.
Wonderful. On Thursday, Councilmember Warren will be recusing herself from item number 9 on this report. I'm not seeing any further discussion, so we will move to our next committee report, which is the Climate and Infrastructure Committee. That will be presented by its chair, Chair Wansley.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chuck. I will actually ask that Councilmember Stevenson and my Vice Chair give the report since he presided over that meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The C&I Committee has 17 items to bring forward. 1, approving the RBC Gateway Food Truck Block Event Permit. 2, approving the Downtown Wednesdays Block Event Permit. 3, approving the annual Saloon Pride Block Party Event Permit. 4, approving the Taste of Minnesota Block Event Permit. 5, approving the Minnesota UFC Soccer Celebration Commercial Block Event Permit. 6, authorizing a joint powers agreement with Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board for the Lake Harriet Parkway and William Berry Parkway reconstruction. 7, resolution authorizing a cooperative agreement with the Minnesota Department of Transportation for the Nicollet Avenue Bridge replacement over I-94 project. 8, accepting the low bid for Oliver Avenue South Storm Sewer Improvements project. 9, accepting the sole bid for heavy truck and equipment bodywork. 10, authorizing a contract with J.J. Keller and Associates Incorporated for the CDL training program for city employees. 11, authorizing a contract amendment with Minger Construction Companies Incorporated for the combined sewer overflows improvement project. 12, authorizing a contract amendment with WSB LLC for 35th Avenue North flood mitigation project. 13, authorizing a grant application for Federal Railroad Administration for connecting Camden Railroad grade separation project and the commitment of local funds for the application. 14, approving Paul Wu for appointments to the Lindale Lake Special Service District Advisory Board. That has an early signature request from the mayor. Approving Jason Cramber for appointment to the Uptown Special Service District Advisory Board. That also has an early signature requested by the mayor. 16, resolutions related to the 2026 lead service line replacement project orders. 17, passage of resolution adopting the stormwater management program and 2025 annual report, and the authorizing public works to submit the annual report to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Are there any questions related to the Climate and Infrastructure Committee report? I am not seeing any. So finally, we will get a report from the Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee presented by its chair, Council Member Chavez.
Thank you, Chair Chugchai. The Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee will be bringing forward 16 items. Item number 1 authorizes a contract with Forest Lake Sportsman's Club for police in-service trainings and outdoor rage facility use. Item number 2 authorizes contract amendments with AGE and Associates, Inc. and GBR, Inc. for interpreting and translation services. Item number 3 authorizes a contract amendment with Certified Language International, LLC for remote interpreting services. Item number 4 authorizes the submittal of a grant application to the Minnesota Department of Public Safety, Homeland Security, and Emergency Management for bomb detection equipment and training. Item number 5 accepts an ASPCA Northern Tier Shelter Initiative grant for spay and neuter training. Item number 6 accepts the ASPCA Northern Tier Shelter Initiative grant for animal welfare conference attendance. Item number 7 is a gift acceptance from the Chateau Health and Wellness Recovery Center. Item number 8 is a gift acceptance from New Mexico Tech. Item number 9 is a gift acceptance from Association of State and Territorial Health Officials. Item number 10 is a gift acceptance from the Minneapolis Fire Foundation. Item number 11 authorizes a joint powers agreement with Hennepin County for provision of domestic violence advocacy services. Item number 12 approves a rental dwelling license reinstatement for 410 DuPont Avenue North, owner Riley O'Neill. And item number 13 authorizes a contract with Minneapolis Downtown Improvement District for safety outreach services, and an early signature is requested. Item number 14 authorizes a sponsor a kennel program for Minneapolis Animal Care and Control. Item number 15 approves a legislative directive related to the police department participation on the Homeland Security Task Force. And item number 16 approves a legislative directive related to police policy and procedures quarterly reports relating to the maturity and Lucier after action reviews. I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions related to the Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee report? Seeing none, we will now move to the rest of
reports relating to the maturity and Lucier after action reviews. I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions related to the Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee report? Seeing none, we will now move to the rest of
Reports relating to the maturity and Lucier after action reviews. I'll stand for any questions.
Are there any questions related to the Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee report? Seeing none, we will now move to the rest of
Flags are present for indicators of concealed domestic violence homicide. And by taking this step, we are asking the state legislature to prevent what happened to Allison Lucier from happening to others statewide. I also want to be very clear that while we are asking the state legislature take action on a legislative directive requesting quarterly updates on the after-action reviews relating to Allison Lucier and Davis Maturi. The legislative directive includes a comprehensive review and progress report on the relevant recommendations and lessons learned from those two cases. If approved on Thursday, the Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee will be tracking the necessary changes identified in the audit report, and we will be able to hold the mayor's administration accountable for those changes that are recommended in the auditor's report. That is the role the Public Health, Safety, and Equity Committee will be taking on. Too often in this body, we hear reports and studies about what went wrong and what needs to be fixed, and then nothing happens. The cases of Allison Lucier and Davis Maturi, along with Mariah Samuels and countless others, are too important to be forgotten, and they require follow-up and accountability. One of the most important functions of this body, of the City Council, is to provide accountability and oversight in these cases and many others who we don't even know about. And the countless actions that we're going to be taking is a part of that. In addition to the actions we're taking as a city, it is critical that the state legislature passes Allison's law to ensure that justice will be served on behalf of victims of domestic violence. And colleagues, I am asking for your unanimous support on this today and would like a roll call.
Councilmember Chavez has requested a roll call vote on this item. Any further discussion? I will recognize Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chektai. Also want to say thank you to your leadership, Councilmember Chavez, for bringing this resolution forward and supporting the family of Allison Lucier as they continue the fight for justice for their loved one who should still be with us today. And I'm also proud to be a co-author on this resolution and very supportive of this bill. And I absolutely want to see the state help us put in stricter guardrails because despite the endless promises of our police department, we are not doing better for victims of domestic violence. And we received a pretty clear audit report that outlined those many shortcomings. And I want to name in particular that while those shortcomings are representative of countless of victims that we don't know their name, we know they're particularly true for those who are Indigenous and who are Black. So we still see the disproportionate impacts of our ongoing failures within our police department to deliver safety for all. And this is one area where we could absolutely use continued support from the state and really making sure that we're holding our police department and agencies all across the state to do better by victims of domestic violence so that what happened to Allison Lucier and her family doesn't have to happen to another family or loved one. And we could be on the upstream of things as opposed to responding to the downstream after the life of someone has been already taken. And this resolution, I will hope, not just reaffirm my commitment, and I know that of Councilmember Chavez and so many of us who have been doing our best to push what's possible in our positions of making sure accountability can be had for Allison Lucier, Mariah Samuels, Davis Maturi, and so many other countless victims. I'm hoping that this resolution reaffirms the collective commitment of this entire body to take the concrete actions we can to ensure that all domestic violence victims, especially Indigenous women, Black women, receive the support and services and care that they deserve. So again, I just want to say thank you, Councilmember Chavez, and thank you to the family of Allison Lucier and so many other victims for joining us today and keeping our feet to the fire to do better by our residents.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Chavez, for bringing this forward, and to the family for continuing to fight for your loved one. We know in Minneapolis that victims of domestic violence or survivors of domestic violence repeatedly are failed to be protected by MPD. Many reports have borne this out. The consent decree calls out specifically the ways that MPD has failed the Native community. And this resolution, and if this law passed at the state legislature, would move us in a better direction. I strongly support this resolution, and I would ask to be added as a co-author, if that's all right.
Of course, if the clerks can help.
Clerks have that noted. I'm not seeing any further discussion, so I will move approval of this item and ask for a second. Second. Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville.
Aye.
Vita.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Schaefer. Aye. Stevenson.
Aye.
Chavez.
Aye.
Whiting.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 11 ayes.
That motion carries. Next, we will move to the Community Safety Training and Wellness Center financing and acquisition item. I will remind my colleagues that we discussed this item last on March 24th and 26th and referred it back to staff. Staff are ready to come back to us. I will invite Director Barbara O'Brien from the Property Services Department to come up and present some more details on this item. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Vice Chair Chuktai and council members. My name is Barbara O'Brien, and I have the privilege of serving as the Director of Property Services for the City of Minneapolis. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge members of the Property Services team that are here with me today. Matt Hannon, Property Services Real Estate Manager, and Ray Dean, Senior Project Manager. I'm also joined by my colleague Liam O'Brien from the city's budget office. The request for council action that has been submitted for your consideration today concerns the financing and acquisition of the proposed site for the concept of a community safety training and wellness center. This request was initially presented to the committee on March 24th of this year and subsequently referred back to staff for further refinement and research. This presentation aims to address the following three key areas: the project concept background and intent, site location and acquisition details, and the proposed financing for the site acquisition. In 2018, the need for a modernized and flexible training facility was first identified within the Capital Improvement Program. The facility was initially conceptualized to primarily support the Minneapolis Police Department. However, in 2021, with the establishment of the Office of Community Safety, the core vision for this project was revised to encompass a multi-departmental training facility intended for all emergency response departments. In late 2021, general site criteria was identified and a site search began in 2022. Since that time, extensive effort has been made to identify possibilities for locating a facility of this type and nature. In the fall of 2025, a site was identified. Negotiations took place, and the city utilized a third party to perform an opinion of values prior to making an offer on this property, and subsequently entering into a letter of intent in late September. Since that time, the owner worked to meet the city's request to resolve a rail spur on the property, which has been complete. Since this acquisition was last discussed in this committee, the owners have communicated a deadline for transitioning from the letter of intent to the purchase agreement. If we cannot advance that transition in May, the letter of intent will become null and void, and we will no longer have the opportunity to purchase this site for city development. The site is located at 146 60th Street West. It's in Ward 11. It is part of the Wyndham neighborhood. The site is made up of 5 parcels totaling 4.77 acres. While mostly open and hardscaped or paved, there is one structure on the southeast corner of the property. The existing building would be demolished as part of the site redevelopment. The purchase price for this site is $6 million, and with an estimated closing cost of $100,000. There are 2 other sites currently on the market that are comparable in size and zoning. One is also in Ward 11, is also listed at 4.77 acres and has an asking price of $9.9 million. The other is in northeast Minneapolis at just over 5 acres and has a listed asking price of $10.5 million. Should we receive approval to advance with the purchase agreement, the following steps could be expected. The signing of the purchase agreement and initial deposit will initiate a due diligence period. This is a 90-day span that allows for inspections, environmental assessments, and further site surveying. Legal review, title work, and finalization of contract documents will lead to a final closing. Funding the remaining balance, title transfer, and finally the possession of the site, anticipated to take place in September of this year. The project concept intent is to develop the city's first community safety training and wellness center. The core vision for this center is to serve as a vital resource for all departments dedicated to ensuring community safety. These departments include 911, the Minneapolis Fire Department, the Minneapolis Police Department, Behavioral Crisis Response, Emergency Management, and Neighborhood Safety. It is envisioned that the key features will include flexible adult learning spaces, modern training spaces, cross-collaborative spaces that do not exist today, and dedicated spaces for wellness and resilience. Currently, training for these various departments occur in multiple locations that are disconnected from one another, several that are leased spaces. The SOC, or Special Operations Center, is currently solely serving the Minneapolis Police Department. It is located in a facility that started its life as an elementary school in 1962 and is located within a residential neighborhood. For many years, the city has leased this space and has realized rising lease costs as well as operational costs. One operational cost of note is the energy consumption costs of this facility, which is one of the most expensive facilities in our portfolio to heat and cool due to its aged structural offerings and our inability to modify mechanical supplies and infrastructure. The lease fees will increase year over year through the remainder of the lease that is set to expire in 2029. Should we not have a strategy in place, we can anticipate additional price increases with little changes that affect overall yearly costs at this location. This slide demonstrates a high-level overview of the property services process of capital project development. As referenced earlier in the presentation, the initial step is the identification of the project concept. This is when the project objectives and feasibility are defined, as well as the establishment of the core vision for the project. This initiates site searches where zoning, accessibility, and market availability are considered. For this initiative, these steps have been complete. We are now at the third step, site acquisition. Please note the 3 stop symbols along the bottom of the diagram. These denote the timing in the project process that you, City Council, have action points. We are at the first of these 3 in the project process, the approval to enter into a purchase agreement. Doing so will allow the programming of the facility to be site-specific, leading to planning efficiencies. The second stop symbol denotes the necessity for obtaining approval prior to awarding a contract for design and engineering services. For projects of this nature, a duration of 15 to 18 months can be anticipated. The third stop symbol identifies the time in the project process when the project design is complete, construction bids have been obtained, and at this point, a construction contract will be brought forward for your consideration and support. To summarize this slide and this process, we are currently in the early stages of development of this project. Property Services, in collaboration with a third-party consultant and representatives from all emergency response departments, have begun the formal programming phase. It is important to note that the project program is not the design itself. Rather, it consists of the information and data needed to initiate the design process. Programming serves as a roadmap that will ultimately become a facility. This phase is one of the most critical parts of the entire process, and tailoring the program to a specific site is the most efficient method of planning. In addition to more accurate planning, other anticipated outcomes of this site acquisition include the ability for the city to capitalize on site control, to forge partnerships and seek financial support that advance the project, which would reduce the overall city dollars needed for this facility. This acquisition would aid in the transition of reduced reliance on long-term leases that do not build equity and are less financially stable. Furthermore, because this site is primarily open, the city can use this property for various needs while programming, design work, and critical decision-making are in progress. The proposed financing for this acquisition has been amended since the last discussion in March of this year. 3 funding sources are identified through reallocation of bond proceeds and bond authorizations. These financial shifts do not have an impact on the timelines for the Animal Care and Control Project or the North Hiawatha expansion. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention this afternoon. I'm happy to stand for questions related to the site acquisition.
Thank you for that presentation, Director O'Brien. Colleagues, are there any questions or comments related to this presentation? I will first recognize Council Member Whiting.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai, and thank you, Director O'Brien. Just have a kind of few notes first, and then we'll ask a few questions of yourself as well. Sure. Colleagues, I want to give you a heads up today that I will be rocking on a resolution on Thursday that I hope will alleviate some of my colleagues' concerns about this project. There seems to be concerns that voting yes here on this land acquisition today means we are writing a blank check for this project without kind of design parameters put around it. And so listening to those concerns, both from my colleagues and members of community and constituents in my ward, I believe that, we should put additional safeguards around this process and that can kind of ensure that this has some additional transparency and accountability built in. With that, I know that many of us have our own reservations about advancing this land purchase without knowing the details of programming that will take place here. My resolution would require that before we issue an RFP for design services, that this council must explicitly vote to approve a proof of concept and facility programming. This resolution is more or less likely to include kind of a mandate of a creation of a working group, which could include members of council, members of city staff, council staff, and then appointed community members as well. And so this group would work directly with property services to identify space needs and ensure the center actually functions as a multi-jurisdictional center, including mental health spaces, space for BCR, and other of our police and law enforcement alternatives before any designers are hired. And now we kind of get to the fun part of the resolution. There would be a strict contingency that if that working group, along with this council, cannot reach an agreement prior to 36 months of closing on the property, the property service would be directed to either present substitute alternative uses that do not touch the proposed proposal of the site, or they would have to divest and sell the property. And so I realize none of you have text in front of you today, right now. I will be getting that. We are crafting that with our offices and help from the clerk's office. But wanted to give you a heads up before circulate that and have conversations with all of you. I believe this is actually an ability to help craft and have a hand in promoting what actual community safety and our reform looks like moving forward. And excited to see how this works both in conjunction with my colleagues here and with members of the community. And so just wanted to note there, do have a few questions for you, Director O'Brien. I forget this is committee, so we don't have time, but I won't take too long. Questions here. So we've heard, I've heard a lot of concerns. Just had a large letter that was received from my office. A quick shout out to one of my constituents, Meredith Fox, who's did a lot of great effort to move and kind of get this concerns out there. And a lot of those concerns were particularly related to the possible inclusion of a gun range. And so if you can kind of talk a little bit about what that would actually look like in a facility like this. I am not sure. I think a lot of us would like to have some understanding of is that I've heard from some constituents that is it an open range, an open air range? Is it underground? Like what would that actually look like?
Vice Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Whiting, I will do my best.
Thank you.
I will start by just reminding that this would be something that would completely be flushed out in design that would be specific to this building and this site. However, it would not be an open air range. The purpose of a range is for fluidity and to be proficient and to be practiced. It's definitely part of a training. It's something that we envision could even be subterranean because we would be building from scratch. This is something that could be definitely underground. I can speak from just industry standard knowledge that typically ranges for firing are reinforced with very thick concrete walls, very thick steel on top of that, and that also goes for the floor and the ceiling of those spaces. So they are enclosed. It's not something that you could hear, or there's no way for any of the things that are going on inside to penetrate outward. So that's a generalization. Did I answer your question, sir?
You did, yes, thank you. I have one more question for you. I know, and particularly I've heard some concerns both in community and from my colleagues as well, as it relates to the cost of this building. Both the kind of proposed cost at $38 million and those that may exceed that cost. And so, right, I've heard some numbers out there that the ultimate cost of this facility could possibly be on that $38 million estimate, right, upwards of I think I've heard $80 million and higher than that. Can you walk us through Property Services' approach, both to kind of cost estimates broadly, and then particularly the cost processes and estimates that went into this proposed $38 million facility?
I certainly can. Vice Chair Chugtai and Councilmember Whiting, council members, that's a great question. So I think the best way to describe that is to back up just a little bit. When a project enters into the capital program, it's not fully baked, right? It's generally a concept. And so when we start working with the concept, setting the vision, setting the parameters of the project, we typically use a process in which we use industry standard price per square foot based on the general use that we know. So in this case, we know that we would have to be considering educational spaces, some specialty spaces. We would have to be considering spaces like gymnasiums or flexible physical training spaces. Each of those have an industry standard cost per square foot. And we can make some predictions based on the number of people that we will be serving in this facility, how big it needs to be. That's the same methodology that we use to understand how big the site needs to be. It also takes into consideration things like parking, site improvements, those sorts of things that are really general, but they are all encompassing of the project, right? And the $38 million that has been identified is also inclusive of site acquisition. So what we're really saying is that to build the building would be approximately $32 million. Now, I will tell you that as we move forward in the design process, should we have the opportunity to move forward in the design process, the program is really helpful. That helps us get down to exact square footages. Moving into design, schematic and design development, those periods are always marked with cost estimating updates at each of those mile markers. And so that also helps us. So I can tell you that we have this as a very educated placeholder today. I'm not sure where $80 million has come from. I would stand here and say that is not the case. I'm aware of facilities of this nature that are being built across the nation that do have price tags like that. But they also are many, many acres bigger, and they are more encompassing to include, full fire stations and full precinct activity, things like that, and emergency response facilities incorporated in campuses. We are proposing a single site on a much smaller acreage than those comparisons.
Yeah, thank you, Director.
Yeah.
That's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have several council members in queue. So next I will recognize Councilmember Stevenson, followed by Vice President Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank the neighbors who came out to watch this and advocates who came out, and thank you for your tireless work on this. I just want to move this without recommendation. Is there a second?
Second. We have a motion to move this item forward to Thursday's council meeting without recommendation. We'll continue with discussion. Councilmember Stevenson, did you have any further discussion?
Oh, no, that's all. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Next, I'll recognize Vice President Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to make a comment on this item. Last time this came in front of the council, I believe I was the one who gave a lifeline and gave this, I voted for yes, because I wanted to give this project a chance. I asked staff to come back with a stronger, clear plan, and obviously that did not happen. And the reason is, today we are asking council to spend $6 million to buy a land without a full plan of the project, and how will this $38 million project, as we mentioned, will be paid. My belief is that the state has not taken any action at all. There's no big saving City of Minneapolis have to build this. So in my opinion and my calculation, that we should not buy a land first and figure out the plan later. It's not really a good plan. It's not a responsible way to spend taxpayers. I still support the idea of modern shared training center, a facility that truly supports the well-being of our first responders. It's a wonderful thing to have a facility for our first responders, but we need a full, clear plan before we spend taxpayers and end up being stuck with big piece of empty land. I made that very clear, and this is the reason I will be voting no, moving this project forward today. So, thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Palmisano.
I guess a few people got out of queue. I do want to point out that number one, and it's something I've said several times up here on this dais, if we are talking about making this into a public safety training and wellness facility, we need to have site control before we go to the state legislature. That is a requirement of the state legislature. So there is an order here that's really important. And the second piece, I think I'll really phrase as a question to Director O'Brien, which is it true that we purchase properties all the time for the vast number of needs that we have at the city? And can you explain that? Because one of the things that Director O'Brien spoke about was about being able to use this piece of land for any number of needs that would maybe not have a public safety training facility on it. But isn't it worth it, given the comparables that she outlined in her presentation, to say, yes, this would be important to have in our capacity for finance and property services for all of the needs in the city. Maybe as a water yard someday, maybe as animal control someday, maybe for some other purpose or use. That's what I heard most as new in this conversation. And Director O'Brien, could you share a little bit about how your division makes land purchases? Because I know we sell it all the time, we see that on agendas, but we also do make purchases.
Sure. Vice Chair Chagdai, Councilmember Palmisano, thank you for the question. Property Services does buy property all the time, and it is for specific projects. That's usually how it goes. And it is most efficient and effective to actually have site control prior to getting too far down the road, because it is best to design to a specific site. Every site is different. Whether it be the access or, maybe even the environmental situation. So we need to go in with our eyes wide open with the site. A recent example was the procurement that was done on North University for the water yard. So we purchased the property and then moved into programming, and we are now in the design phase. That is the order that is best. That is industry standard for the way that we perform our work.
Yeah. Thank you. And I want to remind my colleagues that were here last year or before, and it's new to our new colleagues, that when we were wrestling with what the next step was for the former 3rd Precinct building, right? There were different opportunities over time of what should be in there. Should we sell it? How might we repurpose it? And you would remember seeing slide presentations, which here are the next 4 needs that fit this space requirement at Lake and Minnehaha. And I believe that to the extent that we as a body can decouple this from a public safety training position that some of us want to be further ahead on before we commit to that we could also agree that this could fit any number of suitable things. It would clean up a brownfield. I think we can talk about this out loud because we have a signed purchase, intent to purchase with a certain price. It seems to be an especially good deal. And we do have needs as a city that are only going to get incredibly more expensive if we don't act on this, which is not some sort of super rush plan, but rather something this division, the people who are here today presenting it to us, have been working on for how long, Director O'Brien, have you been working on this property acquisition?
Years.
A year? For over a year.
Vice Chair Chugtai, Councilmember Palmisano, this specific site was brought to our attention in the late summer of 2025. So just under a year on this particular site, but we have been doing site searches for a number of our projects for years. When we need property that is over 4 acres, it's very difficult to find.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I just wanted to put that in front of us as an option here, and I hope we can stay in dialogue on it and not just back and forth. I think this is important, and I think this honors our city staff's time, resources they've already spent themselves, their own time and energy on this kind of a project. I think that I don't have much of, if any, of that fun industrial zoned property in my ward. It is unusual to find, and we need it for so many of the things that city government does. So thank you for being here to answer questions this afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Vice President Osman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I came back to just follow up one comment here. First of all, the staff, thank you for your work. You do amazing work every time. Doesn't matter what project we're speaking about. Yes, Councilmember Palmisano is right when she said that we have to have the control of the site before we go to the state. It is true, it's fact. But I have seen and I talked to state legislators who publicly actually came out against this project, and those legislators are not just they are Minneapolis delegation that came out against this project. So that should have some kind of weight on us. There's no magic $38 million that will come anywhere. Yes, I agree that we should definitely continue to seek a proper way to get the money from the state or the feds, whoever, to support us this project, on that. And the argument of this having site control for projects for someday is not a good plan for taxpayers. When that someday comes along, I'm happy to support purchasing that, depending on what that project is and how that will benefit for our residents. But I don't think it's a really smart decision just to buy the land now and hope for a project for someday. That is not what I think my residents will be happy about. So thank you, Council Member Chuktai.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Vitaw, followed by Councilmember Schaefer.
Thank you, Chair. My commitment to this project has always been what the North Side has asked for, getting these services out of Wards 4 and Wards 5. The gun range is in the 5th precinct in a very residential neighborhood, and the training facility is in Ward 4. I mean, it's literally in people's front and backyards. And so my view of this process is a commitment to the north side that we're at least working towards that. I don't think we're against having a training center on the north side. We just don't want it like in the old school in someone's backyard. We don't want the gun range on Plymouth Avenue. I don't know how many of my colleagues know this, but the north side's precinct or the school, they're different than anywhere else in the city. Like everybody else's precinct are on these major streets, on like Lake Street, and the first precinct is now right off the freeway. So everyone else's precincts are situated different. Ours is actually a former community center, the way that people have been trying to reclaim back for decades. And so any and everything I can do as a Northside Council member to not only help people reclaim that community center back and to get those services out of those residential neighborhoods, I'm going to do that. And that's what I've asked my colleagues to do. No, it's not a perfect situation where we have the money or we have it all figured out, but there is something about giving a community hope and letting the community know that we're working. When colleagues stepped up and said, they didn't want to go back into the 3rd precinct, I certainly listened to that and understood and voted for another facility like nearby for the 3rd precinct. And all I've been asking for 4 years is support on a process, on some sort of just some listening to what people are saying. I'm not saying everybody wants this in North Minneapolis, but what I'm saying is the people who live on Bryant Avenue, the people who live on Morgan are saying, there's a shooting range downstairs that has operated for many years too. So I'm gonna say we know how to design a shooting range for the police department, because there's been one in the 4th precinct since it's been there, and that is where they keep the guns and keep the bullets to do the shooting. Literally a block away from a medical facility, a whole Lincoln School that Prince went to is right in the area, a park, multiple parks, North High School. All of this is happening right now. This facility that you all are asking us to support is not in that same kind of area. And again, I'm okay with you finding somewhere in North Minneapolis away from the community in this way and like developing a process. I'm also totally fine with, we're gonna figure out how this is gonna happen after we acquire the land. Staff knows, for 4 years, I've been saying, where can we do this at? What is happening? What can I take back to the community to say the possibility is on the horizon? And so now we have it, people are watching, and we're saying, not right now. We don't know. We actually don't know if this is gonna happen on this site, but at least we can try. And at least we can go to the next step and say, we have the land, now we can do it, is what this process means to us. It's not about, we don't have the $40 million or we don't have the plan. I don't remember ever developing things like that. As a city council member, as a parks commissioner, I mean, we've done all this work to access the river. You get the land, then you develop it. Then you take community through this process that I've seen take, the Upper Harbor Terminal, God only knows that was 20 years of like work to come up with some of the parcels having something on it, but acquiring the land was first. And so that's all I'm asking. I'm asking for a chance to at least say we're working towards something. We're gonna get these services out of this community. We don't know when, certainly, but at least we're working towards something.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Schaefer, followed by Councilmember Wansley.
Yes, I would just like to say a couple comments. Yes, I agree that first we have to have the land and then we get the plan. And we work in that order, and that's been consistent throughout our city work and parks work, as Councilmember Vita has established. I guess the point I would like to raise is that for us as a city, after Annunciation and Cristo Rey, why it is controversial for us to invest in the mental health and training of our first responders. Our city has put our first responders in situations that no other city has had to face. And I believe that this is one thing that we can do to continue to invest in the very public safety of our city and by prioritizing this work. I also believe that this is an opportunity for us to really make a stand around fiscal responsibility as a body. This is an opportunity that will be gone if we vote this down. This is a fiscally responsible decision, whether we plan it out for first responders, whether we plan it out for another use, if we don't arrive at a design that we all feel comfortable with. We are turning down a piece of land that is already proven that will be sold at a much higher price, most likely, with the comparison that's next door. So my view is that as council members in times of strict budgets, but yet caring for the long-range vision of improving our city and improving the services that we provide, we are missing an opportunity if we don't vote to buy this land at this point in time. And for a price comparison, with the additional $6 million for the North Commons pool that was allocated this past Sunday, we will be spending as a city just shy $49 million, almost $50 million on the North Commons facility. I hope that puts this $38 million into perspective for my colleagues. $38 million to be able to train and have the health and wellness of our first responders prioritized. That number may go up, but it's, in my viewpoint, that is a very reasonable number to begin with. And so those are my thoughts at this moment, but I hope that we don't miss this opportunity because it is a chance to invest in the long-range health of our city and in whatever way we choose to use this land purchase.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Wansley, followed by Councilmember Palmisano.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chuck Todd. Just so many thoughts. Most immediately, I can't believe we would even frame this as an opportunity when it's very clear this will become a liability. I am just trying to go down the various points here. First, the shifting goalposts around this project is also just very disturbing. It's been very clear that the Frye administration has wanted to acquire a parcel or some land for the explicit development of a public safety facility for the police. That has been consistent. And the idea that all of a sudden we could buy a piece of land without a plan, which also I don't know where other people have been. I have never heard an actual functioning government body say, let's acquire land without a plan first. Most fiscal conservatives or anyone would say that is fiscally reckless to say, let's buy land first before having a thoughtful development process and all those things. And how I know it's kind of ridiculous because we've asked community partners to do exactly above and beyond that. When we were debating the East Phillips or Roof Depot project and actually trying to give that over to a community that has largely experienced concentrated pollution and a variety of racist impacts by living in that area, they went out and actually got state dollars that actually got approved this past legislative session. They actually went out and got development financing for their project. And we made them go through 10 years of loopholes and made them come forward with a 10-tier plan around what this project could look like. And we still, or a majority of this body for several years still said, no, that's not enough. So I know we have said to community partners and to business developers all across the city, you absolutely do need a plan if we're going to provide any support. So this is a complete shift here. And the idea that don't get the land before the plan. Absolutely plan before you buy some land. I think anyone would know that. A homeowner, anyone would recognize that is just ridiculousness. But before that, also let's go to the next piece of the gun range. And actually there is some positive movement on this because I do think this is a shared agreement point. No one wants to have a gun range in a predominantly black community in North Minneapolis, and also don't think that gun range needs to then be shifted out of that community to another community, particularly in Windham, 40 feet away from a school. And it doesn't need to be in that residential area. So we actually have some positive tracking towards that because OCS is asking us to approve a RFP right now for in-service trainings and outdoor range facilities that will go into effect on June 1st of this year, so our law enforcement can actually execute their gun range training. So we are actually having an interim solution to meet the needs of this, and it's at $100,000 per year, and that is something that we could make permanent so that several residential neighborhoods would not have to bear the load of having gun shots go off in their communities by their first responders. So let's move forward with that. Also, this is just astounding. Also, the piece around health and wellness of our first responders. I think it's important to highlight again the substantial amount of money that this body has already poured into that function by itself. That is also a requirement of the settlement agreement. In response to our facilities assessment that says we need to upgrade the police facilities, we have poured nearly $100 million into that alone, and the renovations of our police precincts and subsequent facilities. And as part of those renovations, they will have wellness spaces as part of it. We also just last summer approved a contract at over $2 million for a new mental health vendor just for the police. So we have ticked that box off by over $100 million. And that does not require us to go forward with another $40 million building. This is just makes no sense in the grand scheme of priorities that's facing our city when we're already coming up against a $200 million plus deficit because of the federal occupation. And we know we could and need to be investing in things like affordable housing, where we could be working to reduce the utility bills of our residents by investing in climate resiliency. The ridiculousness that we would go forward and say, you know what, let's buy some land and not have a plan for it. Not actually buy land with the plan to say, let's build 200 units of 30% AMI housing. Let's go buy some land and develop a municipal grocery store. Let's go buy some land and develop a facility to help people who are experiencing substance use disorder, since that's been a shared priority amongst this body of us wanting to actually have treatment responses to it. But no, let's go buy some land with an unclear plan, but we actually do have a plan. We want to build a cop fortress for our police officers. That is the plan. No matter how you want to shake it, how you want to reframe it, that is the plan. And that is something that I am not supporting. We are already expending hundreds of millions of dollars for one department, the police department. It's time to be looking at what else we've neglected by constantly holding ourselves hostage financially to this department in a way that actually meets the needs of our residents. And that is the opportunity in front of us that I would like to see us pursue instead.
Thank you. Next, we'll continue with discussion to Council Member Palmisano and then Council Member Chavez.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, to say that when people talk about a school being 40 feet away from this site, that's not true. The nearest school is Windham Community School. It's over half a mile away. It's an 11-minute walk. Annunciation is over a mile away from this specific property. This current site, as it stands right now, is a simple demolition of one or two buildings with like roofing problems. It's a very simple structure. My understanding is it used to hold buses in there and trucking stuff. This kind of site demolition could be accomplished with very little investment, and it could allow us to lease it out or use the site for something in an interim if we choose to go this route and choose to use it for any of multiple projects that Finance and Property Services has in mind for this site. I'll mention again that it's zoned industrial, which opens up a lot of possibilities to how it could be used. One of the changes in the 2040 plan and other comprehensive plans over time have really shrunk our city's amount of industrial space in our city. And there's a benefit to that. We did that very intentionally. It's about having a healthy city and a healthy community, but it does leave a bigger and bigger challenge when we're trying to house certain functions within our city. Our lease with Minneapolis Public Schools for the Hamilton School expires in a few years, and it increases at exponential rates, at compounded interest rates. It becomes very much not a good deal, up to 20% increases annually. If we don't have something in place in a few years, we're in a very poor bargaining position to renegotiate that lease or do something else, anything else. Why not spend the next 3 years working with each other and with community to vision how this site could be used as a public safety training and wellness site? I want to leave that open to discussion. I could make a motion here to substitute to move this forward with recommendation today. And we all know up here that it would be successful, but I don't want to fight like that. I don't want to fight like that. I do think that in all of my work since 2017 on something that would be a training facility, and at the time, this shows how needs grow and change over time. At that time, it was just a police facility. Now, it could be something so much more than that. If we want this city council to have a seat at the table, to change how that training is done, to do a work group, to agree to programmatic components or not, then I would really suggest that we move forward and do this as a police training and wellness facility. That is something that we could achieve as a body here this term. But if we don't, we have multiple other ways to use this site. I do know that one of the objections to this from people who feel differently than I do on this would be saying, I don't have the luxury of making a business appropriate decision here. I don't have the luxury of being able to have us purchase something because it's a good deal and we could do other things, because then whatever, they want to fight against this as a training facility. To me, that feels like really giving up the shot that we're offered here, really giving up the opportunity to make this something more and to put our stamp on it together. So I will leave this as moving forward without recommendation and hope that we can stay in the conversation with others on it.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Councilmember Chavez, followed by Councilmember Whiting.
Thank you, Chair Chugtai. Just because it was mentioned, comments about what this body basically does or doesn't do about police wellness, I just want to remind this body and the public that on March 5th, the Minneapolis City Council adopted the appointed position in the police department, Director of Police, Health, and Wellness. So I just want to make sure that there's a variety of different actions that the City Council has done when it comes to the mental health and well-being of our police officers, and don't want the public to take some of the comments on this dais and misconstrue the work that we have done when it comes to wellness, because part of the reason why I think it's really important that we continue to invest in the wellness and health of our officers is because the last thing we want is an officer to be out on the job and end up murdering someone because they were working too much or their wellness wasn't being taken care of. So at least I wanted to acknowledge that this body has, in multiple occasions, invested in the wellness and mental health for our police officers. And I won't be supporting this today. One, I think that when we sign up and vote for this, it's going to be held over our heads and say, well, now you all voted for this, so you have to invest $38 million if the state legislature doesn't fund this project. That is my concern with this vote. However, I do take very seriously the concerns of some of my colleagues talking about the impact of this being in North Minneapolis. So I do think that there are ways to address those solutions. I just don't think this particular project and investing in this particular building that would then, in my opinion, feel like it would cost $38 million for the city, because I don't think the state legislature would prioritize this, then mean that we would have to use taxpayer dollars to subsidize this. But I still think that there is a way that this body can come together to address the issue with Northside in terms of not wanting it in their neighborhood. And I think that is a long-term plan that we should figure out as soon as possible and what that could look like. So I just wanted to at least make some of those comments.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Council Member Whiting, followed by Council Member Vita.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Chuck Tai. And to my council colleague Chavez's note, I think he's exactly right. He notes that this body has been supportive of mental health investments for our first responders, and I think that's exactly right. Right over the last term, we have seen multiple investments into the mental health aspects of our first responders, and I think it was I was one of the, when I was in the city attorney's office, one of the folks that wrote the contract with LE Mental Health, and I believe that was a unanimous vote across this body, and appreciate that investment. And to Councilmember Wansley's point, I think, I wish we have ticked all of these boxes, right? I wish these are the boxes that have been ticked, right? LE Mental Health was a recommendation under the consortium, which is one of the assessments that is required by the settlement agreement. Another recommendation within that assessment is that they have to build out facilities and centers for the mental health and betterment of that. And so I think there's versions of this, and what we are seeing, Councilmember Wansley correctly notes that we have spent, I believe, over 80 million, I think upwards of hundreds of millions on precinct investments as of late. And it's what we see across consent decree cities. Is what you see a massive investment in cities that are under consent decrees into their first responders facilities, into their training, into their mental health, because we have seen over generations what the lack of mental health, of training, of facilities, of alternatives to policing results in, both particularly in Black and brown communities, but across the city. And so, right, it is expensive. It is going to be extremely expensive for the next 8 to 12 years, because that's the average lifespan of settlement agreement and consent decrees. And I think that's, if we are going to do it right, which I want to do right, to Councilmember Wansley's point, I wish we have checked off all of these boxes. I wish we were able to go up to Alifa and say, hey, look, we did everything. We are compliant with the settlement agreement. We are compliant with our consent decree requirements. We are compliant with the Safe and Thriving community report, but we are not. All right, this is a portion that Alifa has put on to the city of Minneapolis that says, if you do this facility, if you create this facility, you are in compliance. If you do not, you are not in compliance. Right? I think there is a version of this that I am hearing with my colleagues that, hey, maybe we can revision and kind of come back to the table of what that can look like. That is where I think the resolution that I hope to bring on Thursday is able to do that, right? Because I hear the concerns of my colleagues. I hear the concerns of community. I hear the concerns of, hey, what is this actually going to be? And let's do that. Let's be a body that actually moves forward and talks about what this is going to look like. Let's be a body that creates what this is and has a hand in controlling what this will be, right? We just had a presentation on here, right, where it has these 3 little stop signs of where in the process we have that. There is no process in here that includes community, right? Except for one that we have the ability to do today, that we actively build in. And I think this is something, maybe we can ask the question of our director, but I think this is something that property services would be okay with, right? And if we have that ability, let's do it. Right, let's actively work together as a body. Let's show this city that we can work together and come to some level of compromise on this body. And I know there is shared visions in this, and I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, but there is a shared version of what this can look like, and I think we have that ability to do it, and let's step up and meet it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Vita, followed by Councilmember Warren.
Thank you, Chair. Director O'Brien, I can't remember the specifics, but so we purchased the second building for the 3rd precinct, which is the one that is being, we just voted on some development of that. Did we have everything like flushed out when we purchased that building for the 3rd precinct?
Through the vice chair, through the chair, Councilmember Vita. We made that purchase and then went into the design process.
Right. So we hired that architectural firm.
Right. Let me be clear. We much like this project, there is a concept. There's an overarching plan. There are not. We have to go through the design process, and to your specific question and to the point, 2633 was purchased, and then we hired an A&E firm to help us through the design process. And it was recently brought to council for the construction contract. So,
so a couple
hopefully I
years
answered
later,
your question.
yes, it did. So a couple years after we purchased the building, because I remember it might have even just been earlier this year, we approved the move forward with the design and all those things for the building.
Councilmember Vita, that is correct. So we purchased that facility, and then approximately 4 months later, we brought a design contract forward to council. That building has been in design for a little over 15 months, and just recently the design was complete, and we brought a construction contract forward, which was approved, and construction has begun on that project.
Great, thank you. And then the original 3rd Precinct building that we still own, that is going to be the Democracy Center, we did an evaluation of that space and an evaluation of what services the city could use in there, and determined that it was going to be the Democracy Center after we knew that we could have saved millions of dollars if we had just like cleaned that building up and used it, versus like the move forward with there was a huge difference in the millions of dollars we spent to acquire a new building and then are gonna equip it to be the new precinct, versus what we could have done with the old building, but the community said they didn't want to go there, right?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing is, you maybe can't speak to this because, you're not the police department. I'll ask someone else. But firearms training is not just like you go do firearms training over there. You got to have a contract. There's like days and days where you do firearms training. There's different kinds of guns, and facilities are set up differently for certain kinds of guns. And so do we have any idea of how much a full-on firearms training would be for all of MPD's requirements?
Councilmember Vita, there are parts of that question that I will have to decline answering because I'm not in the operations police, and I will not be able to answer the qualifications that they have to meet annually. That's just not my place to ask. I will tell you, though, that since March 24th, when this was sent back to staff for further research and reconsideration, we did take the opportunity to spend a lot of time talking with, touring, asking questions of places that do provide firearms training, like the Hero Center, trying to understand the annual costs of those activities. We recently received the annual report from the Hero Center for 2025. Some interesting points that answer your question are, on average, it costs $3,200 per officer or per individual per annum just for training space at that facility. It doesn't include the trainer or any of the things. So if we were to do basic math, if we were to utilize that center, which we know that they are at capacity and they can't take all of us, but let's just say hypothetically, at that rate, with the number of officers that Minneapolis has, it would be over $2 million a year.
So $2 million a year just for the basic range training. Because my understanding is that this contract that was brought up today is kind of like a specialty training. It's not like, it's like a certain kind of, I'm sorry, Director,
I can't speak to that.
I've asked questions about this in committee. an after committee actually, and it sounds like this isn't like something that could have been done at the 4th precinct. This is outside of what happens. And I know, like, I talk a lot about the gun range, and that's primarily because people don't want it there, but there are other functions that this training facility could house, like the driving range. Right now, we have another contract with, I don't even know how much that costs, with Anoka County or somewhere for the police to do the driving range training. We have training contracts so that they can do fire truck training. We don't have a facility for the proper fire ladders and, you know, those sorts of things. So where it's not just about like this one contract with the gun range that is a lot of money, there are other parts of this that would be housed in this facility where if we combine the resources, I mean, I think overall it sounds like cost savings and, you know, alleviating trauma for community members is a big factor. But it certainly sounds like we need to be cost effective for how much this is going to be, not only now, but years to come when we're talking about having contracts with multiple agencies that may or may not even have room for us to use their facility. That's also an assumption too, that, you know, the regular training for MPD could be used in these facilities also. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Warren, followed by Councilmember Stevenson.
Thank you, Vice Chair. It is to my understanding, and someone can correct me if I'm wrong, that, you know, the investment in doing this training facility was something that this council body voted unanimously on over a year or so ago?
I think this is in reference to the IGR platform.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Vice Chair Chagtai and Councilmember Warren, I can't speak to that. I'm sorry. I think that was I believe you're right. I think that was a different
Can you provide
division.
clarification, Vice Chair?
I'm happy to. In December last year, the City Council adopted the IGR platform, which we go to the Capitol and lobby for those priorities that are included in that. And this a public safety training and wellness facility was included in the IGR platform.
Okay, and so it was something that this body decided about in the IGR platform of December of last year?
To go and ask the state for money for this, yeah.
Okay, and so you asked the state for money for this last year in December? And they provided you with funding for that?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Nope.
So, but it was something that was unanimously decided upon at that time?
At the recommendation of staff, and then we went and lobbied for it over the course of this legislative session, I believe, and
no,
we didn't
she's saying no.
Oh, no, I can't speak to that.
Yeah, that's what
okay.
happened. Yeah, and we didn't receive any money.
All right. Well, so it seems like it was a decision that was made and everybody was on board with it. Now all of a sudden it's changed. And I hear individuals on this body saying, yes, we care about the North Side and we understand that it's in the North Side, but the North Side always has to hurry up and wait. And we have the highest level of area concentrated poverty in the city of Minneapolis, the highest level. But we always got to hurry up and wait, take a back seat, let us think about it, let us go over here, figure out something else or whatever else the case is. And we're the last ones to receive an investment or removal of things that are not serving our community in the capacity that it needs to be served. So I understand that, yeah, it's land acquisition, $6 million today. Go ahead and spend that $6 million today because you're going to spend more money on it later. Because inflation of land prices are going to just go up. So when it's time to purchase another parcel of land, whether it be 2 years from now or 5 years from now or whatever the case is, you're still going to spend more money. If you can get it at a discount now, purchase it while it's on special. because we know no one's putting any other opportunities out here to make any great deals of money that everybody's so excited about spending. So, I mean, if you have the opportunity to make the financial investment in the land now while you devise a plan, because you know it's going to be a training facility, that you know, but you have to devise the plan of what that looks like and how that body of work is shaped, and it all makes sense to me. It just, I mean, and everyone says, oh, they care so much about North Minneapolis. Well, I can't damn tell. I can't tell. I can't tell, because when it's something that we are asking for as it pertains to North Minneapolis, or removing things from North Minneapolis that do not serve our community and its capacity, everyone drags their feet and is very dismissive about the things that North Minneapolis needs. And that's really tiresome and mentally exhausting. So I can't see how people are so concerned, but you want to come over there, you want to eat fried chicken, you want to kick it in the parks, you want to hang with the people, you think it's cool, it's cute, it's fun, whatever else the case is. But when we're telling you what our needs are in the North Side, no one pays attention to what the North Side's needs are. And that's exhausting, and it's disrespectful. Everything over South gets all the bells and whistles and this, that, and the other. You got a whole new 3rd precinct, burnt the last one down. We could have used that same dang on building, and then the money that was used to build a whole new 3rd precinct could have went to go build this training facility, and we could have get this stuff out of North Minneapolis. But instead, nobody's paying attention to that. So I don't really think that it's people on this body that really truly care about the North Side the way that they say that they care about the North Side. So if you care about the North Side, then vote to go ahead and purchase this land so that we can reshape the North Side the way that the North Side needs to be reshaped, and invest in the North Side the way the North Side needs to be invested in. The end.
Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Stevenson, followed by Councilmember Wansley.
Thank you. There was a comment that a new training facility is how we're going to get police accountability. We need to train our officers differently in this new facility, and that's how we're going to get better policing. That's how we're going to deal with a pattern and practice of racism. And I'd just like to say that's not true. We won't have accountability in the police department until we actually hold officers accountable for their actions. There was the recent harassment of a trans security guard. We're going to be seeing a lawsuit on that, I'm sure, very soon. That's a behavior issue. Nobody just harasses trans people because they haven't been trained properly on how to treat people. There was the murder of Amir Locke, and instead of the officer being disciplined, the officer was promoted to be the head of wellness in MPD. Then there was the under-policing of Davis Maturi and protecting Davis Maturi, and yet no officers have been held accountable for the many repeated, documented, let's call them mistakes. No one held accountable for that. Public safety won't improve, and a pattern and practice of racism will not be removed from the police department until officers are held accountable. We can have the most beautiful facilities on the face of the planet, but if we let officers do anything they want and don't hold them accountable for it, we will continue to get officers doing whatever they want. And unfortunately right now, that is harassing trans security guards, that is murdering black men while they have blankets covering them, that is not protecting black men from their racist neighbors, and the list goes on, not to mention Allison Lucier, who we were just talking about, and Mariah Samuels, among others. Can we please drop this framing that if we just had better facilities, or if we just had different training, that we would not see the gross misbehavior by some officers? What we need is accountability for officers. And just as a note, I was looking into past complaints. Somebody was showing me the dashboard of past complaints for the police department, and I thought, oh, I should look up the officer who shot me. He has one complaint. It's not from me. I realized later that I actually never submitted a complaint. And that's because, to quote my lawyer, the process is a joke. He had a complaint for getting a DUI in 2023, and it took over a year for him to get suspended for 4 days. 4 days unpaid vacation for getting a DUI, going 90 miles an hour drunk on the freeway. This is what we're doing with officers right now. We are not treating them to the level that we treat every other community member. We have higher expectations of everyone else, and we're not going to get the changes in our department until we demand the changes in our department. And I'd really, really like to dispense with the idea that a new facility would suddenly get us officers who are behaving properly if we're not going to actually follow up and demand that officers behave properly. Thank you.
Thank you. We've got 5 additional speakers in queue right now. It's 3:09 p.m. and we have captioners until 4:30. That's not to say I'm asking anyone to get out of queue. It's just to note that we have one more discussion item after this. I'll next recognize Councilmember Wansley, followed by Councilmember Schaefer.
Thank you, Vice Chair Chuktai. Just a couple corrective framings. Well, first starting with this idea that the consent decree means that our city has to basically bankrupt ourselves in order to have police officers that do not abuse the human or civil liberties of our Black, Brown, and Indigenous residents is just preposterous. We do not have to allow ourselves to continuously be put in a negative net financial position by one department, and that's constantly what's constantly happening. And the consent decree is used as the tool to say, oh, you want officers who don't abuse you or brutalize you, then yeah, that means taxpayers, you're going to have to pay the buck for that. And that's simply not true. This is what this body is here for. We are here to help control the purse of the city. And that doesn't mean we have to rubber stamp every single thing that says, oh, it's for the police. We can actually go in and say, oh, is this actually a need? Is there another way in which we can repurpose existing city dollars and resources to meet other pressing needs like affordable housing and climate resiliency? And that's exactly what this body did in December, where we took the money away from this project and said, we're going to invest it in keeping our streets safer. So regardless if you're using a mobility device, if you're a family using a stroller, if you just need to get around our city safer, we're going to make that happen. And we invested the $5 million that were allocated towards this project and redirected it. And that was a signal that this project did not have buy-in from the body. And that is the continued theme that we can approach ALIFA with. This idea that we can't go back to ALIFA with a different plan is also not true. We can absolutely come back with one that's actually inclusive of what the administration is already doing now. And, a colleague mentioned that no one's listening to Northside. Actually, I would say this is one of the opportunities where the Frye administration is listening, because the contract that I referenced for the in-service training and outdoor range facility that is coming before this body, I just want to read what the administration submitted in terms of what this will do. This proposal requests that Minneapolis Police enters into a contract with Forest Lake Sportsman's Club to provide law enforcement training facilities beginning June 1st of this year, 2026, through May 31st of 2029 for the amount of $300,000. And this is to provide police, storage, training facilities, full use of the facility while close to the public during police use. So they will go there and be able to shoot, essentially. And that starts next month, in a couple of weeks. So this was an opportunity where the administration actually listened and said, let's find a way to get these services out of our residential areas. And we're saying, yes, keep going in that direction. That is what the contract says that the administration is bringing forward because they heard those concerns. And we could continue to build on that and say, yes, let's continue doing a decentralized model of providing for these training needs of police that does not warrant the formation of a $40+ million building. That is simply what we're asking for. And we can work together, not to make this facility happen, but to make sure we don't go bankrupt in the pursuit of it. I also want to frame, again, this idea that we can buy it and then plan for it and that there's other examples where we've done that. Particularly what was brought up was the South Minneapolis Community Safety Center. That is going to be located in my ward. In fact, we did not do that. I had to go and look back, and I was like, oh, I remember before we did the acquisition vote of that parcel of 2633 Minnehaha, Mayor Fry sent a 47-page memo outlining what was supposed to go in that, the programmatic intentions of that center that would have included our community safety responses and preventative responses. And that 47-page memo laid the basis, along with us providing funding as a council, to make sure that there's human traffic services that's going to be there. There's going to be social work services. There's going to be all these type of mental health responses that's going to be happening there. But they shared a plan before asking us to buy that parcel. So we have once again saw that this is a typical practice, that we don't want to go in making new purchases without thoughtful planning. And if we do decide to do it, it shouldn't be for things that we're already doing. We're already spending hundreds of millions of dollars on getting the police department in compliance with not abusing the human rights and the civil rights of their residents. Now, let's shift focus. Let's build housing, actual affordable housing. Let's actually talk about indoor playgrounds for our families and keep them here. Fun stuff. This is not it. So I just wanted to offer some clarification on a couple of things that were raised. And again, why I won't be supporting this project. I won't be supporting soft reframing of these projects, be it resolutions or whatever. I'm ready to truly take the $40 million and redirect it into the places that we know will actually keep our community safe and raise their quality of life.
Thank you. Next, I will recognize Council Member Schaefer.
Yes, I have a request, and I'm not sure, Director O'Brien, if this would be from your department or a request to another staff person, but we've talked a lot about the fiscal responsibility of this decision. And I think what would be really helpful for us and my colleagues, or myself in particular, is what are the actual costs that we are spending on decentralized training at this point in time across the board, not just for police, but for fire, for any kind of multi-siloed practice exercises between departments off-site. I think that would give us a really clear picture of what are we spending currently for decentralized training, and including the $1.2 million a year for the SOC that's going at a 20% increase every year from now through 2029. And then also, so facilities and people training and any other category that would be, in that training category. And then also holding that to, as best we can estimate, what of those activities could be handled on a new site. In particular, this 4 acres, maybe some of those activities that are multi-departmental couldn't happen on that site because of size. I don't know. But if we could get kind of a fiscal comparison of like where we're at now and what we spend on training, everywhere, and then what of those pieces would we potentially consider moving to this site, and what would be that dollar amount? Is that a feasible request?
This is an appropriate question for a follow-up response. I don't think Director O'Brien will be able to answer that question.
That's what I meant. I didn't know what to call it. But
clerks, if we can note that for a follow-up memo. Thank you.
And I just want to say, I have to dig more into. I'm just not understanding. If we're ignoring a direction from ALIFA. It sounds like we can go back and ask them something else. I will get clarity and do my own homework on that. But I don't want us to look back on this opportunity and then realize we could have checked that box and done it in a much more fiscally responsible way. So that's my only final comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I'll recognize Councilmember Whiting, followed by Councilmember Chavez. If it's actually okay with both of you, can I jump in with some questions? Okay, thank you. Director O'Brien, if you wouldn't mind coming back. I see that a bulk of the funding for the site acquisition, the $6 million for site acquisition, is coming out of the Animal Care and Control Facility capital budget, about just $3.8 million is coming from the Minneapolis Animal Care and Control Facility, or PSD 22. It has been a part of the city's capital budget for several years now, I believe dating back to 2022. I was looking through old CLIC reports during our council study session, and I remember there was a section in a supplemental report about the capital budget that referenced us that a portion of the capital funding would be used to undergo a study for the animal care and control facility. It's been several years since this was first approved. Can you tell me if a study has been completed on this facility?
Yes, Vice Chair Chugtai. Thank you. Great question, and I'm happy to talk about it. And that is why this funding was identified for this resource in the first place. A study was done, primarily because the building has had a lot of issues with being undersized. And mechanical and electrical, just infrastructure in the building generally. And so we did an overall study with a third-party consultant that came in and looked at it, at the building and how it functions, and what suggested modifications could be made so that we could better function there with animal care and control. When the building was first designed and built, it was intended for domestic animals, dogs, cats. Today we function with a lot of exotic animals as well, and they are housed there, cared for there. The surgical suite that was in that building needed to be moved and changed to accommodate those needs. Today, the surgical suite is kind of in a thoroughfare within the middle of the building. When the building was designed, it also did not have outdoor space for animals. We have since modified that, and there is a makeshift outdoor space that is really small, but it exists. It's on the boulevard. And there are a significant amount of issues with access for adoption, pet adoption, and people coming to that very same lobby or space for disputes about animals or other reasons. There's very little space and division of those functions. The study ultimately recommended that in order to meet the space needs of the care of animal and surgical suite, that the adoption portion would have to move out and have to be all, we would have to find a new spot for that. They also identified a number of deficiencies in HVAC and electrical, which is indicative of the age of the building. So upon further review and listening to the data, paying attention to the details and the data coming into us, it made more sense for us to put a new project in the capital program for animal care and control that would keep those functions all together. We would be able to provide outdoor space for animals, which is way more humane, and we would be able to keep animals from having to be transported daily for adoption purposes if we were to use another adoption location. So the decision was made to put a new project in the capital program, leaving us with available dollars that could be applied for this site purchase. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, it would be really helpful. You absolutely have. It'd be really helpful if you can send that report that was completed to the body. Thank you. And then can you tell me shifting gears, can you tell me what the assessed value of this site is that is proposed to be acquired?
So the tax value is $2.4 million. oftentimes there is a difference between a tax value and a market value.
Yep.
And so we did hire a third party to do a valuation of value, and the offer that we originally made was right in line with that, and we received a counter offer, and then we countered one more time. We are not far off of the independent evaluator's estimate for this property. Again, there's a difference between taxable value and market value.
So 2.4 million is the assessed value of this property, yeah? Am I recalling that number correctly?
Or 2.3.
Something like that?
I'd have to look it up.
Just over $2 million. Something that we have heard to be true by the city assessor's office, and then anecdotally in the ecosystem around the sale of commercial industrial properties in Minneapolis over the last several years since we have come out of COVID, is that that commercial and industrial properties are being sold at significantly lower than their assessed value. That's actually that's created a significant problem around how we budget. It's created significant problems around the tax burden and how it impacts residential properties. So it just strikes me that this is a commercial or industrial property, but we're purchasing it for far above, about 3 times greater than its assessed value, when we are seeing in the ecosystem that commercial industrial properties are selling for far below their assessed value. Can you help me understand? I don't know that it's helpful to get into the discrepancy here, but I'm just noting that that's something that stands out to me. I'll just shift gears to my last question then. Something that has struck me is the cost that comes with the maintenance of parcels of land that the city owns. I remember, I think it was a couple years ago, that the administration told us that it was costing somewhere in the ballpark of $250,000 every single month to just have just to maintain the Roof Depot site. Are we accounting for the maintenance of site, security, additional security considerations during construction in this $38 million budget? And how much of that is this cost?
So, Vice Chair Chugtai, of course, there would be what we call holding costs until the building goes into construction, and then the dichotomy kind of changes. So while we would have the property during design and pre-construction activities, we would obviously have to take into consideration what those holding costs would be, and I think it would be primarily the bond services for the dollars associated with the purchasing. And then we would do our own internal security observations with our mobile unit. This site is different, significantly different than the Roof Depot site, because the Roof Depot site is mostly consumed by a facility that has not been conditioned or does not have fire suppression or electricity or any of the things. So we really needed to pay attention that nobody was there and getting hurt and securing it. So this is an open site, so the security would be significantly different. Not void, but different.
And have we accounted for costs? Certainly it wouldn't exist within a capital budget, but, all assets that we own, we then pay to maintain them. Everything from janitorial services to just basic staffing. Have we accounted for costs like that are going to be baked in for the life of the building while we own it?
Yeah, so that is also part of, I mean, there are general assumptions that happen right away in the general estimating. As we move forward in the design finalization, those things are definitely fleshed out. And then staffing and...
Well, that's not a pleasant sound. We'll wait for someone to tell us that something is wrong. Why don't you continue with your presentation?
Okay. I'm sorry.
I'm so sorry.
I'm sorry. Let me just recollect where I was. The staffing is generally departmental provision. Buildings that come online that are owned and operated by the city of Minneapolis then fall into our rent model, and they are operations are paid for that way.
Thank you. I will recognize Council Member Whiting, and then we'll hopefully call the roll on this item.
Perfect. Thank you, Vice Chair Chugtai, and I will be brief again on this. And I appreciate Councilmember Stevenson noting right that buildings don't create accountability, and I think I completely agree with Council Member Stevenson on that point. And I think we'd note what does bring about accountability is all the things that I think are in the consent decree and the settlement agreement. And what that means is that I don't think we should be picking and choosing which parts of this agreement that we should be moving forward. Right, We do have there is notes from ALIFA that they've approved this facility, just like they have told us that you need to continue to invest in the Office of Police Conduct Review, to invest in internal affairs, to invest in policing alternatives, and to invest in every single thing that the consent decree and settlement agreement says. I don't think I've heard anyone on this body say that buildings bring about accountability, but these things work in conjunction with each other. And that if you look at every single consent decree city across this country, every single one of them are engaging in investments across the public safety ecosystem. What that requires is, again, investments in all things public safety. I don't want to be a city that begins to pick and choose what those reforms are. If we are going to move forward with what experts has given us, that it is why we are paying $1.5 million. It is why we are paying a massive amount of money for the city attorney's office, for MPD, for all of these things related to engaging in police reform work. If we are going to do that, I am trusting that work to move forward. And so, I think the moment that we start cherry picking the things that we want to do within our settlement agreement and within the consent decree and in the Safe and Thriving Community Report is when we start to move outside of what actually moves our city and reform work forward. I think we all have the same commitment up here that we want to see these reforms move forward and reforms of MPD, so we don't engage in the same pattern of practice of unconstitutional policing that we have seen, and two non-biased governmental agencies have told us we have to do. I am listening to those agreements, as I know many of my council colleagues are, and I think we have to continue listening to those things that are in front of us. And so, I appreciate all the conversation that is happening up here. I know that we, again, share the same communal, universal need to improve public safety in this body. It's just figuring out how to get there and the best way to do it. And so I appreciate you, Barbara, and Director O'Brien, and the rest of the team for bringing this forward, and hopefully we can come to some level of agreement on this body. Thank you.
Councilmember Vito.
I'm sorry, I can't hold it in. This outdoor range situation is really bothering me because it is an outdoor range. Officers have to be cleared yearly to do outside range activities. This is one component of a contract that has been going on for like 20 years. It's not a new thing. It's not some sort of compromise for the mayor or anyone to say, let's change how shooting happens in North Minneapolis. This has been happening the entire time that police are doing their range activities at the facility in North Minneapolis. This is specifically outdoor shooting range activities that are required by the state for officers to be able to carry a gun. That does not stop them from needing an indoor facility.
Thank you. Seeing no one else in queue, I will ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion to forward this without recommendation to Thursday's council meeting.
It's crazy.
Councilmember Wansley.
Aye.
Rainville is absent. Vita.
Aye.
Warren.
Aye.
Osman.
Aye.
Schaefer.
Aye.
Stevenson.
Aye.
Chavez.
Aye.
Whiting.
Aye.
Palmisano.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Chuktai.
Aye.
There are 10 ayes.
That motion carries, and this item is forwarded without recommendation. We will now take up our final item on this agenda. This is a response to a legislative directive from myself and Council Member Vita requesting information on the police department's 2025 spending. For this item, I will welcome up Chief O'Hara and Deputy CFO DeSenza to present on this item. I know the chief will be joining us as well.
He will, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to pull up the presentation.
Take your time.
Okay. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. I'm Jane DeSenza, the Deputy CFO. And I'm here today. I'll be joined by members of the Minneapolis Police Department to present a memo that we worked on in response to your legislative directive about MPD spending in the prior year. So I don't have a slide deck for you, but I do have a memo that's being displayed. And we're choosing to display the information in this way because you asked for a lot of financial detail. And I want to make sure that everybody knows how to navigate the memo and find the information that they're looking for. So I will walk through this memo, and then I imagine you may have questions, some of which may be for me and some of which may be for members of the police department leadership. So the first question is a detailed description of budget overages in the department in the prior year by the categories that are listed in the LD. So first, I'll just note that departments' budgets are adopted at the department and fund level. So we might expect to see in the normal course of a year that overages in one area would be offset by underspending in another. Departments work with finance annually to true up their budgets to reflect actual spending as much as possible, but we know that we don't always get it 100% correct every year. So on page 2, you'll note that there is a table that has a lot of information, so I just want to take a moment to walk through how to read through this. So what we did here was pull general fund expenses for MPD so that you can compare against their 2025 budget. So those are broken out by category, and then below the category you have the more detailed account description. So for example, to read the salaries line, you can see that in the 2025 budget in the general fund, police were budgeted for just about $110 million of salaries. They spent a little over $99 million, and so there was underspending in that account code of $10.7 million. So that's how you read that table. Another item to note, as many of you know from past current service level presentations, we do not inflate non-personnel budgets year to year. So you might notice, for example, to take printing as one example, the department had a budget of $70,000 for printing, but they spent $127,000 of printing. Printing is not a budget that gets inflated just as a normal course of doing business. So a department would either need to shift resources around to cover something like that, or they would need to come to you to ask for a budget increase.
The second question asks about the MPD's spending on the motorcycle unit. Those motorcycles were purchased in 2025 from the 01210 fund, which is their special revenue fund for forfeiture. MPD submitted that request and worked through the fleet department to purchase those motorcycles at $126,000. There is no planned ongoing maintenance or replacement of those vehicles in the fleet allocation model. Next, the council asked about the total amount of money spent on department vehicles that were acquired between 2023 and 2025. So we looked for information on new vehicles acquired in those years that were outside of standard squad cars replacements. And so again, I have another kind of dense table that I'd like to take a moment to walk you through. So this table shows by year and fund the vehicles that were added beyond the standard replacement costs. So on the left column, you'll see the year. So here at the very top, we have 2024. And then the fund number is below. So fund 00100 is the general fund. And then you can see what purchases, the dollar amount, and then a description were for each of those years. Below the general fund, we have that 1210 fund, the asset forfeiture fund. The 1300 fund is a grant fund. And then you see the same funds repeated for 2025. There were no expenses in 2023 that matched that surge. So the total there was $1.7 million. Next, the council asked about money spent on travel and lodging. The answer is $310,000 were spent on travel in 2025. In question 5, the council asked about critical staffing overtime. This is a policy that was introduced in the fall of 2022. It was designed to address staffing needs for events and shifts when regular overtime was not sufficient to fill those positions. So this was a double the regular rate of pay overtime. MPD can speak to this, but approval goes through the MPD chain of command. Critical staffing overtime is no longer in use by the department. There was a letter of agreement that was annual, which expired at the end of last year. And that is the LIMS link that is included in this memo. Related to critical staffing overtime in question 6, the council asked about the fringe benefit costs related. The answer is that MPD spent about $3.7 million on variable fringe. So that's the fringe that's associated specifically with those critical staffing overtime hours. Moving to question 7, this is one about response protocols. I'm gonna read this aloud. In order to determine whether the department failed to respond to a call for emergency assistance during critical staffing overtime, the department would pull data for calls in which there is no arrival time listed for a squad. However, there are several confounding factors in the data in these cases. For example, in a medical call, if a medic were to arrive prior to police and they determined that the law enforcement was not necessary, they may cancel the police request. The data for that call would indicate a failure to respond if not taken in context. Similarly, a 911 caller may decide to cancel their request for assistance, or they may move their efforts to an online police report. Calls can be appended to a concurrent duplicate call as well, which would result in that same failure to respond data outcome. On the next page, you'll note the average and median call times for 2025 and median and average priority 1 response times in the table below. Question 8 is about contractual spending by the department. So the council requested the name of vendors, the services, and the dollar amounts of those contracts. So again, I won't read these all line by line. You'll see that there's more than one page of these, but just to note a few things. This is an extract from the accounting system. So we have the contractor name, the description, which is a short description, the total maximum contract amount, and recall that contracts can extend over multiple years. And then we have the amount spent in 2025 listed. In blue, you'll note contracts that MPD is spending on, but that are not necessarily held by MPD. So one example of that would be NCR holds the translation services contract for the whole city. When MPD uses translation services, though, they're charged for that. You'll also see in some of the contract descriptions MDHR pop up, so that's an indication that that's something related to settlement agreement implementation. So there are several pages of this, and the total spend in 2025 was $11.3 million. And then the final question is more about financial policies. The council requested some information on how the department complies with financial policies. We noted that financial policies are adopted for the city overall. The department meets regularly with finance to review their financial data, so there's a monthly touch point. Ensuring that those financial policies are maintained is a collaboration between finance and all departments. In addition to those financial policies, the city is bound by accounting rules, and we are subject to annual state audits to ensure that we're following them. The next question asks about account codes. So account codes are specific types of expenses in the financial data. So salaries would be one, health insurance, et cetera. The controller's division in those monthly meetings with departments reviews those financials, and that is the point at which you would make sure that things are coded appropriately. Funds have different uses. So we all know that the general fund is unrestricted. Its purpose is not limited to a specific type of spending, but other funds have rules. So grant funds are adopted for specific reasons that are defined in the grant agreement. The 1210 fund that we've discussed already today accounts for expenses and revenues related to federal and state administrative forfeiture, gambling, and some service contracts. Those dollars are limited to law enforcement purposes, and they can't supplant agency resources. So MPD has its own finance and accounting team, which are a first line of review before the finance department reviews. And I'll note MPD is without a finance director at the moment. Special revenue funds like the 1210 fund are also discussed in quarterly reports. So if you're interested in more on those, you can refer to the reports from the controller. And the final question is about expense approval and who has authority to sign off on new expenses. So MPD is like other departments in that they're subject to purchasing procedures, public purpose rules. Those are all available to city staff within our intranet. And when there are questions, we always hope that departments will reach out to finance for clarification. Within MPD, staff would normally work with the MPD finance director for approval to spend, and that finance director would review for public purpose and coordinate with sworn leadership to understand what the operational impact may be. Purchasing cards or P cards are limited to a small number of employees, and those purchases are reviewed routinely by the MPD accounting staff. And that concludes my portion of this, and I'm happy to stand for any finance questions.
Thank you. Colleagues, are there any questions? I will recognize Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director DeCenza and all the staff who helped come up with these answers. I've been asking these questions for a very long time behind the scenes, trying to get answers to them. The budget chair and I have had many discussions about this. I thought it was easier to get answers to questions, and because I could not get questions answered at all, we had to go this route with this legislative directive. So it was never intended to put you or anyone on spot. It's simply to get the answers to questions I'm being asked about MPD's budget. So thank you so much for so graciously spending the time to do this and get answers. I do have some questions, and I think the questions are for the chief or someone from MPD. Thank you, Director DeCenza. The first question is about the motorcycles. So I know there's like 4 motorcycles, whatever. There's a dollar amount here associated with the motorcycles. But this says that you can't speak to any training costs. So did just 4 people get picked that can ride a motorcycle already?
Chair, council member, yeah, well, currently I don't have a finance director today. So this information, I've had to rely on OCS as well as the city's finance director to provide it. I don't have it available. I know there was training, there's a specific police training course, I believe that's held in Wisconsin, that the officers attended, but I just don't have the data on that available.
Meaning you don't know how many people went to the training and what it cost?
Chair, council member, there were, I believe 6 people went to the training last year. I don't have the costs available.
But there's a record of it somewhere,
yes.
though. Okay,
yes.
So I don't know why it's not here. And I'm really hoping that this doesn't turn into I don't have a finance director, so we don't know the answer situation, because this has been a long time coming, and I'm hoping we can get some answers to these questions over the next couple of weeks. My expectation is certainly not, Chief, that everything has to be answered today, but that the questions get an answer even without a finance director, because I literally almost fell out of my chair when I sat with the budget director and found out that she couldn't just open up a computer and show me a log of everything. I thought we were gonna sit down and just look at these line items, and that's not the case. So I'm really hoping, whether it's publicly or the meeting you and I have scheduled coming up, that we're gonna get answer to these questions, and it's not gonna be because somebody's transferred into a different department that we can't get answers. And that part was really a part of this question, was how much did the training cost? And there is a cost associated with it, and I would have liked for it to be here. And the second piece to that is the maintenance. I'm a scooter rider. I have been for a very long time. Every year I have to pay $300. They're coming to my house Thursday to pick my scooter up for maintenance, a tune-up, to get it ready for the summer. And it would have been good for the question to be answered about ongoing maintenance for Harley Davidson motorcycles, right? And so I would like a follow-up to that. What is the maintenance cost? Where is the money gonna come from maintenance for this? Because you use the forfeiture fund for this purchase, but what is the follow-up to that? How are we gonna get this paid for in the future? I mean, I don't know, I've never had a motorcycle, my sister does, but I don't know, how much it costs to maintain that every year, and where is this money gonna come from, and where is it gonna be in the line item every year for me to see and to go back to Ward 4 or North Minneapolis and say, this is for the motorcycles. And then, the bigger question though is, what is the motorcycle unit for? I have no clue what it's for, and would love to know more about that.
Sure. Chair, council member, the motorcycle unit is a secondary assignment, so it's not officer's primary assignment. It is secondary. It is very common in most major city police departments around the country. We are looking to use them not specifically for enforcement, more for, both in the downtown core, around a lot of these large congested events. They're a lot more mobile. And can respond faster in the event of a critical incident. Also looking to use them more around community engagement and presence around community events. They were around last year. One officer actually responded to the Annunciation Church, and then they were present in the aftermath at some of the community events around that. So those are the primary reasons for it. The officers tend to be more visible and tend to be noticed. and are able to, there's been a lot of positive feedback that we've had so far in that it helps officers engage in a positive way with people in the community. So those are really the main reasons why. But currently it is, as several other components of the department are, it's a secondary assignment for officers.
Okay, meaning like there's no traffic unit that that's what I know motorcycle units to do.
Chair, council member, the full-time members of the traffic unit are investigators. So they're just the people that respond out for the, traffic investigations.
Okay, got it. What about, I mean, thanks for this ledger, but it's still kind of hard to understand some of this. And like I said, everything doesn't need to be answered today. But I'm trying to also get to the bottom of the take-home vehicles. I know the question maybe wasn't as clear, Chief, but I was trying to understand expenses associated with this question, like how many take-home vehicles are out there, and how much do we pay as a city? Because Chief, if someone has a take-home vehicle, do we get gas for it or do they get gas for it?
Chair, council member, there's majority of vehicles, for example, for people that are in the appointed staff are contractual, and it's defined by contract. Then the remaining vehicles that are there are discretionary under policy, and that's for a number of people that may need to respond from home to an emergency. So there's certain supervisors around the SWAT unit and Special Operations Division, all of the homicide investigators. Now that we have a fast team, the officers that are on call, if you will, for shootings and those. And yes, I believe the gas and the maintenance, that's all provided by the city.
Okay. Do you know how many people in the department have a take-home vehicle?
We do, Chair, council member, we do know that. I just don't have it offhand.
All right. Yeah. That'd be great to know. And then this item 01, this might be for Director DeCenza, but there's an item 0120, and it says add bill for unit 7428, armored SWAT van is $13,968, but then it says add another unit and it says $23. 23. What does that mean?
The journal, this one? I don't know. I think the 23 is right there. Yeah. I don't know what that means.
Through the chair, Councilmember Vita, I think you'll see for a few of those vehicles that there's a few lines, and there might just be multiple invoices that hit. So these were just the expense transactions.
So there was, the one underneath that, is that saying that $202,000 was used to purchase a new van, but these other two are just bills that go along with the SWAT van?
Through the chair, yes, Councilmember Vita. You'll also see,
It's the same vehicle number.
Same vehicle number. So we tried to show for you consistently the vehicle numbers so that you could sort of trace that back. At the base, you'll see that there's bomb unit trucks and then upfitting for them. So the upfitting is recorded separately from the truck purchase.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got it. So, Chief, is there like a ledger or something with all of the vehicles, or in the trailers and stuff that we have? Because the finance department sent me something a few weeks ago that showed 2 trailers at 1.3 million or something like that. And I don't know what that's reflected at on this. I don't know when they were purchased, but it was certainly, this expense of over $1 million for 2 trailers.
Chair, council member, I'm going to pass it off to Commander Reisdorfer, who oversees and deals with the fleet stuff.
Oh, thank you. Welcome, Commander.
Thank you, ma'am. To answer your question, the way Fleet Services manages our fleet, each and every vehicle or trailer gets its own P number is what we call it. So when you look at that document you're seeing right there, you'll see 74424. That's its own essential social security number of that vehicle, and Fleet Services has a complete list of everything for the entire city, not just MPD. So we would be able to go back to Fleet Services and pull that, and then we also maintain a record management for the chief as well.
Okay, so that's something I could work with you on, is seeing like what exists for the vehicles.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think that's it for now, council member. Chair, I'm sorry.
Thank you. I had some follow-up questions as well. I'm not seeing anyone else in queue, but I'm happy to pause if others get in. I'll start with looking at the first table that's provided in the memo. I really appreciate that. And we'll start at the bottom because I don't want to start with a question about staffing and then get completely derailed and never come back, never move on. So starting at the bottom, and it outlines all of the different aspects of the police department budget that was either under budget or over budget. As an example, starting from the bottom, under capital equipment, this budget was overspent by $1.3 million. Can someone speak to why that was the case? What's the $1.3 million overage for specifically?
I'm going to yield back if that's okay.
If you give, through the chair, if you give me 30 seconds.
Take your time.
I can answer that for you.
And then I'll just preview for you. We're going to go right back up the list. So after that is going to be other, and then travel, transportation, parking. Take your time.
Through the chair, I have in my notes that the capital equipment $1.3 million spend was the purchase of 2 command trailers, and the operational impacts of that I can't speak to.
All good. So we'll pause there and invite up someone from the police department to speak to what a command trailer is and what its purpose was in this case. It's just for context, there were $16,000 for capital equipment in your budget, and you spent $1.3 million, and so that's why I'm asking.
Council, excuse me, a little new to this, so.
All good.
Chair, going back to that vehicle where we're talking about that extra $300,000. So what takes place right now is when we buy a vehicle, there's usually a replacement plan with the city. And so we set money aside to essentially replace this vehicle. When it came time to replace that vehicle specifically, there wasn't enough money set aside for it, or we actually had to buy a smaller version of it to try and get us into that budget. And so this is an example of where the Fleet Services side, we didn't have those funds, and that's where that over budget came from.
That makes sense. So you purchased 4 of them? That's how we got to $1.3 million, or what?
The one command trailer was 75013. That's the 291,000. That's listed underneath the vehicle one. That's the one that I was referring to. The second one, I'll have to pull that specific information. Sorry, I don't have that off the top of my head.
All good. Yeah, it would just be helpful in a follow-up memo if you can outline then where the remainder of that 1.3 million comes from.
Thank you, Chair.
Let's, for the sake of convenience, skip over the $6 that are over in the other category. Now let's move on to travel. You had $120,000 budgeted. You ended up spending $310,000, so you were approximately $190,000 over budget. Why were you $190,000 over budget for travel? I see the chief coming up.
Chair, I don't have the specifics on all of the training, but there was a number of training. Travel related to training that's out of state. So for like the bomb technicians that need training that's out of state, there's a lot of things related to the drone, the negotiators. some hostage rescue training that happened during 2025, threat assessments, some things for traffic around DRE, a drug recognition expert, and a number of different leadership training classes that are held out of state. Typically what happens is with training and the travel that's associated with that, it is vetted through the training division. And then there's ultimately the deputy chief over training specifically makes the approval, working with the finance director to identify the funding source.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that you bring up what happens typically, because typically what happens in every other department that doesn't have the money to pay for travel is they usually bring forward a gift acceptance, and they get the vendor that's doing the training to pay for said training. I know there's actually several gift acceptances that come forward, almost always late, from the police department for travel and lodging expenses related to attending conferences, trainings, whatever it may be. So it just concerns me that the road to $21 million is paved by overages bit by bit. And so that you went $190,000 over budget instead of finding gift acceptances or finding other ways to make up those cost savings is just a little concerning. For the sake of convenience, again, we'll skip over transportation and parking and training and taxes, licenses, and fees, which are both under $1,000. But let's go to supplies, where you went about $23,000 above budget. Can you speak to what supplies is, what that means, what that overage is?
Chair, I don't know.
Wonderful. We'll take that for a follow-up memo. In the bucket of operating costs, the next item that went over budget was subscriptions, about $3,000, but there was no budget for subscriptions in the first place. Can you speak to, I would imagine this is just one subscription that might have been of paramount importance that I don't know about?
Chair, I don't have the information on the majority of these, but we can follow up with any specifics.
Then we'll take that as a follow-up memo as well. Repair and maintenance supplies, $221,000. Would you know about that?
Chair, we'd have to follow up with that.
All good. Public safety legal expenditures, $54,000.
Chair, you could ask me literally every single line in the budget. I don't know it offhand.
Okay. I mean, I guess that was the purpose of this legislative directive, is we were seeking a detailed description of all of the budget overages in the department that were spent in 2025 for each area where money was overspent, detail whether or not this was an external service to residents or money spent internally in the department. So that's all. I'm surprised. Yeah.
Chair, I was not aware of any request around this until we received the legislative directive. And I've heard since then that council members were trying to get information, but it did not come to me. I don't know if it went to someone in the police department, but it did not come to me.
The legislative directive was approved a couple of cycles ago. That's when it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it's been 2 cycles now. Okay. I'll just go through other categories just in case you have information about some of them. Food and beverage, $2,000 above budget.
Chair, I believe, for example, I don't remember in 2025, but for example, in January, there were times where we had to buy food and beverage because we had people working, in the command post during the surge, that kind of thing. I don't recall in 2025 what events that would have been.
Okay.
But that's the type of thing that line is for.
Yeah, so we'll note for a follow-up memo if you can detail what this $2,000 is overages for. To be clear, the base budget was $40,000 for food and beverage, and you went $2,000 above budget. For awards, contributions, and grants, there was no budget for it, and about $7,000 were spent should we include that as a follow-up memo as well?
Yes, please.
Okay, sounds good. The next two I actually think might be appropriate for the deputy CFO. These are internal service charges for IT and fleet that both were above budget. I understand that the model for cost allocation for internal service charges is a part of the calculation during the current service level. Can you just speak to why the actual for an internal service charge might be higher than what's budgeted?
Sure, Chair Chugtai. So I think Commander Reisdorfer got at this a little bit earlier with the fleet fund being, the budget for that has been slowly ticking down. And so there is less balance available for some of the fleet replacement costs. So they may be they're charging the department for some of the services that would normally have just been covered. I think we can get more specifics on the IT charges, but if they're, as departments have more subscriptions as services, those charges are more variable than in prior years where we just bought a software and that was a static cost.
That's helpful to know. And then in the follow-up memo, it would also be helpful to detail out, there's a subscriptions line item that also went over budget. So what's the distinction between subscriptions as it's outlined in this table and subscriptions that may be included as a part of internal services IT?
Absolutely.
Is my question making sense?
It does. And I think, Chair Chugtai, what I would be expecting in the subscriptions line are things like professional associations, those types of expenses. I know finance has our GFOA membership in that line. So,
that's helpful. Yeah. Thank you. Chief, if we can get you back. So the next several are in the contractual services budget, and we started with the first two that were for the deputy CFO. The utilities section of your contractual services budget went $72,000 above its $330,000 budget. Would you like that noted for a follow-up memo?
Chair, my understanding that's literally utilities like electric bills and stuff like that.
Okay. And then it would be just helpful to know if the department always goes over budget there. I see the deputy CFO nodding yes, so that one I'll consider answered. Transportation didn't have a budget, but ended up spending just over $11,000 on transportation. I can't tell what the difference is between transportation and that listed here and then the transportation and parking line item that's below. But if you would, let's note that for a follow-up memo because you wanted a follow-up memo earlier on this area. Next, we can continue to training. Which went $602,000 above budget. It was budgeted $330,000. So you spent about twice as much as what was budgeted. Can you tell me about what that was for?
Chair, again, I don't have all the specifics, but there was a lot of training last year. The training division itself conducted about 20,000 hours of training in-house, and then in addition to that, many members were sent outside of the department for additional training. There's a number of the training that is conducted that is required for members to maintain various certifications and licenses, and then in addition, a lot of emphasis has been placed on leadership training and trying to develop members of the department.
Mm-hmm. I think, okay, that's helpful. I think in the follow-up memo here, what would be helpful is understanding the distinction of what's being counted in the training section here versus the training and education line item in operating costs versus the travel line item under operating costs. You've brought up training as a response to the question about travel being so significantly above budget. So it'd just be helpful to know what is training, how does that relate to the different line items and what actually contributed to them going over budget. Next, we'll go to space and equipment rent, which was $130,000 above budget. Can you speak to that, or would you like that to come in a follow-up memo?
Chair, it's possible that is the grain exchange.
Say that
the
one more
grain
time.
exchange, the building
grain exchange.
across the street where we have some space rented out. But I'm not certain.
Great. So we'll note that, clerks, for a follow-up memo. Repair and maintenance was $113,000 above budget. Can you speak to that?
No.
Let's get that, clerks, noted for a follow-up memo. Radio and telephone services was $376,000 above budget, nearly twice its allocated budget for 2025. Would you like to address that, or are you able to address that, or would you like that in a follow-up memo?
Chair, I'm not able to address that. I know if that was the cell phones, I believe the line for that was reduced. I don't know if that's also the cell phones, that particular line.
Okay. So if we could get that noted for a follow-up. Professional services had a $3.3 million budget, and it was $1.75 above.
Please.
Chair Chugtai, and I should have mentioned this in my remarks. We did not, as you are aware, we have the settlement agreement, general fund obligated reserve. Those figures are left in here for maximum transparency, and so some of those overspendings, particularly I would say in professional services, would be associated with that required settlement spending.
So like ALIFA contract? No, that lives in finance.
I believe the ALIFA contract hits elsewhere, but some of those required trainings and like the contract to get through the backlog, for example, is hitting the MPD budget.
Okay, that's helpful. Well, that would be concerning because that was supposed to fit within the department's existing budget. So if we could get that addressed within a follow-up memo, that would be great as well, Chief. Printing, $57,000 above budget. Can we speak to that?
No.
Follow-up memo, please. Parking, $290,000 above budget. Follow-up memo?
Chair, I don't think I can answer the remainder of these things on here. I just don't know all of this offhand.
Okay, so for parking, miscellaneous, medical services, intergovernmental expenses, advertising and publication, unemployment, pension, life and disability insurance, health and dental was within budget. Wow. Overtime, it'd be really helpful to get follow-up memos that detail what exactly the overage came from. Are there any questions, colleagues? Councilmember Vita.
Thank you, Chair. Chief, just one last thing. You know, back in the day, I was the chair of public health and safety. And the bomb squad had these trainings all the time, but we received grants for them. Like, has that changed? I always thought like we really never paid for any of that, and they would come because they would come through the committee all the time from the feds and from state grants for that training. Are we paying for that? Have we lost those grants now and we have to pay for them? Or I know you said you maybe needed to check on that, but just wondering like if we've started to lose funding on those grants for getting training, because there certainly was a lot of funds from the feds and from the state that came through committee. So I would certainly like to know if you're seeing a trend, because we have to account for that if that's the case. If we're starting to lose money and support and it's not budgeted for that.
Chair, council member, I do know some of the training during this time period is covered by the FBI, but I believe there are other expenses related to bomb training that we incur. I don't know if that has changed over time or if that was always the case.
Okay. Well, my office will send some questions, Chief, so that we can get some things in advance in preparation for our 1 hour meeting. But this is kind of concerning because like I know the firefighters lost some money for like more firefighters and all these things. So I think I'm just a little concerned that these trainings that we know we need if we're not getting grants and we don't have funding for it, how do we allocate money for that? And like, if we are just getting the grant still for these trainings.
Through the chair, Councilmember Vita, I think we can still do some more research on that. I did just want to note in last summer, the council did vote on a $30,000 increase revenue to the police department associated with the bomb squad, and that was part of a JPA with the state for those services. But we can follow up if there's any other.
But that was
grant.
for services, right? That wasn't for like the training. I just recall the trainings being paid for.
Okay.
And like a gift acceptance coming through, and we did not have expenses associated with that. Or if we did, it was very minimal.
We can find out.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Great. And then let's just make sure, clerks, you've noted the question from Councilmember Vita about grants that we received for this. Thank you. I'm not seeing anyone else in queue, so I'll ask the clerk to receive and file this report, and perhaps we'll continue this item to the next committee of the whole meeting, as most of our questions today were not answered, so that they may be answered at our next committee of the whole meeting. And certainly at that time, we can continue it again if we have the department unprepared to respond. With that, we have completed all business to come before this committee today, and without objection, we are adjourned.